Tonight, have you ever wondered what it would be like if the world around us had been speaking all along, but in a language human beings can scarcely hear, cannot see, and rarely become consciously aware of, in the stillness of a forest, beneath the immense depths of the ocean, or even among a tiny line of ants moving quietly beneath our feet? Billions of invisible messages are constantly being sent and received. There are no words, no sounds, no flashes of light, only tiny chemical molecules, yet powerful enough to shape behavior, guide the course of life, and sometimes determine the survival of an entire community of living beings. Carl Gustav Jung believed that much of what governs our behavior does not reside within conscious awareness, but lies hidden in the depths of the unconscious, a realm where ancient patterns silently continue to shape the way we perceive and respond to the world. When we look at the phenomenon of pheromones, it is difficult not to be reminded of that idea. Nature itself seems to possess an unconscious of its own, where life has communicated through quiet, unseen signals for hundreds of millions of years, long before language, and even before conscious thought came into existence. On tonight's gentle journey, we will explore 100 fascinating facts about pheromones, the mysterious chemical language regarded as one of the oldest forms of communication on Earth. You will encounter colonies of ants constructing invisible highways that guide countless travelers, honeybees maintaining the harmony of an entire hive through a single chemical signal, moths capable of finding a mate from several kilometers away, and even one of science's enduring mysteries. Do human beings truly possess pheromones of their own? This is more than a story about biology. It is a quiet reminder that nature always contains layers of meaning far beyond what our eyes alone can perceive. The more deeply we explore the world around us, the more we may come to understand ourselves, a journey that Jung believed always begins with curiosity and with the willingness to listen to what appears, at first, to be invisible. If you enjoy gentle scientific storytelling, the mysteries of the natural world, and thoughtful explorations of the human mind, told at a slow, soothing pace to help you unwind before sleep, we warmly invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss the journeys of discovery still to come. Now, settle comfortably into your pillow. Take one slow, deep breath. Allow your body to soften and relax. And together, let us step into the extraordinary world of invisible messages, where each tiny molecule quietly tells a remarkable story about life itself. Part 2. What are pheromones? As night settles gently over the world, every sound seems to slow its pace. The wind continues to drift through the branches of the trees. Rivers quietly make their way toward the sea, and somewhere within the darkness, countless living creatures continue conversations that have never truly ceased. Yet, if we pause to listen, we may hear nothing at all. There are no voices calling out, no flashes of light serving as signals, and no visible gestures clear enough for human eyes to recognize. And still, messages are exchanged with astonishing precision. What is happening within this profound silence? The answer lies in a word that may sound unfamiliar, yet has played an essential role throughout the history of life. Pheromone. In biology, a pheromone is defined as a chemical substance released by one individual that triggers a specific behavioral or physiological response in another individual of the same species. The definition itself appears straightforward, yet behind it lies hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. A tiny molecule released into the air, onto the ground, or into flowing water is far more than a simple chemical compound. It is a message that nature has carefully encoded across countless generations. When another member of the same species receives that message, an almost instantaneous chain of responses is set into motion, as though the two organisms have spoken to one another in a language that only they can understand. One of the most fascinating aspects of pheromones is that they are entirely different from what we ordinarily think of as a smell. An ordinary scent may remind you of childhood, awaken a treasured memory, or create a feeling of comfort, or perhaps discomfort. Those experiences are shaped by memory, culture, and personal emotion. The fragrance of jasmine, for example, may bring peace to one person, while leaving another completely unmoved. Fragrance is, in many ways, a subjective experience. Pheromones are different. They do not exist to be appreciated or enjoyed. They exist to transmit precise biological information. When an ant discovers a source of food and leaves behind a pheromone trail across the ground, the ants that follow do not pause to consider whether they should trust it. They simply respond. When a honeybee releases an alarm pheromone, the entire colony almost instantly shifts into a defensive state. There is no hesitation, no lengthy process of deliberation. It is a form of communication that evolution has refined for maximum efficiency. At this point, it may be worth pausing for a quiet moment to reflect upon an idea from Carl Gustav Jung's depth psychology. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This well-known passage appears in Aeon, Researches into the Phenomenology of the Self, 1951, and has become one of his most frequently quoted insights. Jung was not speaking about pheromones. He was speaking about the human unconscious. Yet it is fascinating to notice that both point toward a remarkably similar principle. Invisible forces can shape behavior, even when we remain completely unaware of their presence. In nature, pheromones function almost like a perfectly choreographed system. First, an organism releases specialized chemical molecules from glands within its body. These molecules disperse into the surrounding environment, carried by the wind, dissolved in water, or deposited upon soil, leaves, and stones. They resemble silent letters with no visible messenger, patiently waiting for the right recipient to arrive. When another member of the same species passes nearby, specialized sensory organs detect the presence of those molecules. In many insects, the antennae serve not only as organs for touch or balance, but also as remarkably sophisticated chemical analyzers. Among mammals, olfactory receptors within the nose and, in certain species, the vomeronasal organ receive these signals with extraordinary sensitivity. Within moments, the information is transmitted to the brain and nervous system. Almost instantly, an appropriate response follows. Move closer, retreat, search for food, defend the colony, or begin the breeding process. The remarkable part is that all of this unfolds within an instant, without words, and without the kind of conscious deliberation that human beings typically associate with making decisions. Perhaps this is one of evolution's most elegant achievements. Nature has never needed elaborate signals when an extraordinarily small number of molecules can accomplish the same task with remarkable precision. It naturally leads us to wonder, how can something so incredibly small produce such profound effects? The answer lies not in the number of molecules, but in the remarkable specificity of the receiving system. Imagine a key and a lock crafted exclusively for one another. A key does not need to be large or heavy to open a door. What matters is that its shape fits perfectly. Pheromones work in much the same way. Their chemical structures are exquisitely designed to bind with highly specific receptors found in members of the same species. It is this perfect compatibility that gives such tiny signals their extraordinary influence. Perhaps this also invites us to reflect more deeply on life itself. Strength does not always arise from what is loud, dramatic, or immense. Sometimes the smallest change, made in exactly the right place, can transform everything that follows. A few words of encouragement, offered at precisely the right moment, may brighten someone's entire day. A single hopeful thought may become the beginning of a healing journey that unfolds over many years. And in nature, one delicate chemical trail may guide an ant colony numbering in the tens of thousands. Jung often emphasized that genuine psychological growth begins when we become aware of the quiet forces operating beneath the surface of consciousness. Observing pheromones evokes a similar feeling. They remind us that the world is not composed solely of what can be seen. Beneath the visible surface exists an intricate web of invisible structures, silent principles, and delicate signals that continually connect living beings within the vast network of life. And perhaps it is through these tiny molecules that we begin to understand something profound. Communication does not always require language. Sometimes the deepest form of connection is found within the quietest moments of all. In the next part of our journey, we will travel back hundreds of millions of years to discover why chemical communication became the very first language of life on Earth, long before eyes learned to see, and long before ears learned to hear. Part 3. The evolutionary history of chemical communication. If we could travel back hundreds of millions of years, returning to a very young Earth, we might be surprised to discover a planet wrapped in almost complete silence. There were no birds greeting the dawn with their songs, no whales sending haunting calls across the depths of the oceans, no insects calling to one another beneath the cover of night, and no eyes yet gazing upward at a sky filled with stars. At that distant time, life existed only in its simplest forms, and the senses that we now take for granted had not yet evolved. And yet, that silence was never the same as loneliness. From the earliest chapters in the history of life, living organisms had already begun to communicate with one another, not through sound, and not through light, but through remarkably small chemical molecules. Long before the world came to know color, and long before the first voice was ever heard, chemistry became the bridge connecting primitive organisms with the world around them. Perhaps that is why many biologists describe chemical communication as the very first language of life. There is something deeply fascinating about the thought that the oldest things are often the ones that endure the longest. Today, as we look upon our modern world, it is easy to think of spoken language as the pinnacle of evolution. Human beings have developed thousands of languages. We write books, compose poetry, and share ideas of extraordinary complexity. Yet if the entire history of humanity were compressed onto the clock of evolution, human language would occupy only the briefest instant. Chemical communication, by contrast, has existed for hundreds of millions of years, perhaps even longer. Perhaps this is another quiet reminder of humility. Nature did not begin with complexity. It began with simple, yet remarkably effective signals, patiently refining them across countless generations. A single tiny molecule could carry information about food, danger, a potential mate, or a safe place to shelter. Whenever the right message reached the right organism, life gained another opportunity to continue. Throughout his work in depth psychology, Carl Gustav Jung often emphasized that the oldest elements of our nature continue to live within us. Although civilization has transformed dramatically, human beings still carry psychological patterns shaped during the distant past of our species. Nature itself appears to follow a remarkably similar principle. The earliest forms of communication were never completely replaced as new senses evolved. Instead, they remained, quietly accompanying the long, unfolding journey of evolution. Imagine a forest at midnight. We may assume that the forest is asleep, yet in reality, millions of messages continue to flow without interruption. A colony of ants maintains the trail leading toward a source of food. A moth silently follows the chemical trace of a potential mate through the darkness. A mouse recognizes the territory of another simply by detecting molecules left upon the ground. No one calls out. No lights flash across the landscape. And still, every creature somehow knows exactly what it needs to do. It reminds us that communication does not have to be seen or heard. Sometimes the most effective conversations unfold within complete silence. So why, after hundreds of millions of years of evolution, have pheromones never disappeared? The answer lies in one of nature's simplest principles. If a solution continues to work exceptionally well, nature has little reason to abandon it. In evolution, the newest solution is not always the best one. What endures is whatever helps an organism survive and reproduce more successfully. Pheromones accomplish this with remarkable efficiency. They require relatively little energy to produce. They function in darkness, beneath the soil, inside deep burrows, and within the depths of the ocean, places where vision offers little or no advantage. They are not limited by obstacles that block sound. As long as the environment allows chemical molecules to disperse, the message can still reach its intended recipient. For many species, pheromones are even more dependable than visual signals. A female moth does not need to be seen by a male from several kilometers away. By releasing an extraordinarily tiny amount of bomicol into the air, she enables him to follow the invisible chemical trail through the darkness until he reaches her. An ant colony needs no map to return home. Each individual simply follows the chemical pathway left behind by others. These solutions have not been tested over years or even centuries, but across millions of generations. There is a quiet beauty in that reality. Nature is endlessly creative, yet it also knows how to preserve what has already proven its worth. Some principles appear wonderfully simple, yet they are resilient enough to endure every transformation that time can bring. Perhaps this reflects a deeper truth about human life as well. Not everything old must be replaced. Some values have quietly endured through generation after generation because they continue to sustain life itself. Trust, belonging, cooperation, and our longing for connection are all ancient languages of humanity. Their outward forms may evolve, but their essential nature remains remarkably unchanged. As we observe pheromones, we also learn to look at the world with a different kind of patience. Instead of focusing only on what is brilliant or dramatic, we begin to appreciate the quiet power of what often goes unnoticed. A tiny molecule can initiate an extraordinary migration. An invisible signal can save an entire colony of insects from danger. A fragile chemical trail can become a dependable compass through an immense and unfamiliar world. And perhaps our own lives are shaped in much the same way. Not only by the great decisions we remember, but also by the small habits we repeat each day. Not only by life's unforgettable moments, but also by the quiet emotions we rarely pause to name. Like pheromones themselves, the things that seem smallest are sometimes the very forces that guide the longest journeys. Perhaps this is the greatest gift offered by the evolutionary history of chemical communication. It reminds us that life did not begin with triumphant voices or dazzling displays. It began with connection, a connection that was silent, enduring, and almost invisible. For hundreds of millions of years, it quietly persisted, becoming the foundation upon which the extraordinary diversity of communication we witness today could eventually emerge. And in the next part of our journey, we will explore the remarkable messages that this invisible chemical language can convey. From invitations to potential mates and urgent alarm signals, to invisible trails that guide the way and chemical messages that allow entire insect societies to function as though they were a single living organism, we will discover that every tiny molecule carries within it a truly extraordinary story about life. Part 4. The messages that pheromones carry. In the previous part of our journey, we discovered that pheromones may be regarded as the oldest language of life itself. Now, a natural question quietly arises. What is nature actually saying through this ancient language? After all, any language gains its true meaning through the messages it carries. Human beings use words to tell stories, share emotions, warn of danger, and express love. The natural world does much the same, except that its stories are not written in sound. Instead, they are composed of tiny chemical molecules drifting silently through the air, across the ground, or beneath flowing water. Perhaps, if we watch with enough patience, we begin to realize that the whole of nature is woven together by countless invisible conversations. The first message, and perhaps the oldest of all, is an invitation to life itself. When the breeding season arrives, many animals have no need to call out to one another. A female moth simply releases an extraordinarily small amount of pheromone into the night air. The wind becomes a silent messenger, carrying her signal across several kilometers. Somewhere in the darkness, a male detects the message and begins his remarkable journey toward its source. To witness this is to feel as though nature is composing a love song without words. No one can see the molecules drifting upon the breeze, yet they quietly unite two individuals who have never met before. Perhaps this also invites us to reflect upon the invisible connections within human life. Not every bond must be expressed through language. Some are felt through intuition, through quiet presence, or through emotions that are difficult to name. These experiences are not pheromones, of course, but they gently remind us that life contains many layers of communication beyond what our senses can directly perceive. Yet nature does not communicate only through gentle invitations. Sometimes a message must travel even faster than conscious awareness itself. Imagine a colony of honeybees peacefully gathering nectar beneath the afternoon sun. Suddenly, a predator appears. The first bee to come under attack releases an alarm pheromone. Within moments, the entire colony awakens as one. Every nearby bee shifts almost instantly from peaceful foraging to active defense. No one issues commands. No leader raises a voice. No meeting is called. A single chemical signal is enough to transform thousands of individuals into one coordinated whole. This is one of the many reasons scientists continue to marvel at the natural world. What we often think of as organization does not always require authority. Sometimes it simply requires a communication system of extraordinary precision. In much the same way, pheromones also become guides along life's pathways. If you have ever watched a line of ants marching across the ground, you may have wondered how each one knows exactly where to go. The answer is surprisingly elegant. The first ant to discover food leaves behind a chemical trail while returning to the nest. The ants that follow simply detect and continue along that invisible path. If the food source proves abundant, more ants travel the same route, reinforcing the trail with additional pheromones until the pathway grows stronger and more reliable. An invisible road gradually takes shape. The truly remarkable part comes later. When the food source is exhausted, the chemical trail slowly evaporates. No one needs to erase the road. Nature simply allows it to disappear. There is something quietly beautiful about that image. Some paths exist only as long as they continue to serve a purpose. Once that purpose has been fulfilled, they gently fade away, making room for new journeys yet to come. Pheromones also help animals establish and maintain territories. For many mammals, a territory is far more than a piece of land. It is where food is found, young are raised, and survival becomes possible. Rather than engaging in constant conflict to defend ownership, many species simply leave chemical markers along the boundaries of their home range. Those invisible messages seem to say, with remarkable calm, this place is already occupied. When another individual understands that signal, conflict can often be avoided altogether. It reminds us that effective communication is not always intended to create confrontation. Sometimes its greatest purpose is to prevent confrontation from ever becoming necessary. Another remarkably subtle function of pheromones is the recognition of members within the same colony. For an ant colony, or a honeybee hive, the distinction between family and stranger may depend upon nothing more than an extremely delicate mixture of chemical compounds. Each colony possesses its own unique chemical signature. With a gentle touch of the antennae or a brief moment of scent detection, an individual can immediately determine whether the newcomer belongs to its community. When we reflect upon this, we realize that human beings also spend much of life searching for a sense of belonging. We seek families, friendships, communities, and places where we feel accepted. Perhaps this longing has existed in many different forms throughout the long history of life's evolution. Pheromones also play a quiet yet essential role in regulating reproduction. In many social insects, not every individual reproduces. The queen bee releases chemical signals that suppress the reproductive development of worker bees. This is not domination in the human sense of the word. Rather, it is an evolutionary strategy that allows the colony to function as a single, integrated organism. Each individual gives up part of its own reproductive potential in exchange for the long-term survival of the entire community. It is a strategy that nature has tested and preserved across millions of years. All of these messages eventually come together to create perhaps the greatest wonder of all: social organization, a termite colony containing millions of individuals, an ant colony with no maps, a beehive without a government, an insect society with no schools. And yet everything functions with astonishing harmony. Perhaps the greatest marvel lies not within any individual creature, but within the connections that unite them. When we observe these societies, it is difficult not to think of the trillions of cells within our own bodies. Each cell performs only a small task, yet together they create a complete living organism. Nature seems to repeat the same principle across many different levels of existence. True strength is found not only within individual beings, but also within the relationships that connect them. Perhaps this is the quiet lesson that pheromones offer us tonight. Not every message needs to be spoken aloud. Not every form of guidance must appear in plain sight. And not everything that truly matters is large enough to be seen. Sometimes the smallest signals quietly keep an entire forest functioning, allow a honeybee colony to survive, guide an ant colony safely home, and sustain the endless rhythm through which life continues to unfold. In the next part of our journey, we will meet the true masters of this chemical language, the extraordinary world of insects, where pheromones are far more than a means of communication. They form the very foundation upon which some of the most intricate and remarkable societies in the natural world have been built. Part 5. Insects. The true masters of pheromones. When we think about the most intelligent creatures on Earth, our minds usually turn to dolphins, chimpanzees, elephants, or perhaps to human beings themselves. Rarely does a tiny ant, a hard-working honeybee, or a delicate moth find its way onto that list. They seem too small to impress us. Their lives unfold too quietly to capture our attention. Yet, if we choose to view the world through the lens of biology rather than size, we may discover that insects possess one of the most sophisticated and efficient communication systems that evolution has ever produced. There is a fascinating paradox within nature. Sometimes the creatures with the smallest brains build the most remarkably complex societies. An ant colony containing hundreds of thousands of individuals can organize labor, expand its territory, defend its nest, care for its young, and locate food, all without a single commander directing the process. A honeybee colony can maintain harmony for years, with each individual appearing to know its role with remarkable precision. From the outside, it is easy to imagine that somewhere there must be a central brain coordinating everything. But the truth is even more beautiful. No king commands an ant colony. No maps are handed out to the bees. No meetings are held, and no plans are written down. What binds everything together is nothing more than countless tiny chemical signals that are continuously produced, released, and received. It is for this reason that biologists often describe insects as the true masters of pheromones. Perhaps the first thing that makes insects so extraordinary is that they do not treat pheromones as merely a helpful tool. For most social insects, pheromones form the very foundation of everyday life. If human beings suddenly lost spoken language, we could still write, gesture, or rely on technology to communicate. But if an ant colony was suddenly deprived of its ability to produce or detect pheromones, nearly its entire social structure would collapse. This reminds us that pheromones are far more than simple signals. They are an invisible network that binds countless individuals into a single, coordinated community. Perhaps it is here that we begin to glimpse a principle Carl Gustav Jung often explored throughout his work. Jung believed that human beings do not exist as isolated islands. Beneath individual consciousness lies a deeper layer that connects us through universal psychological patterns shared across humanity. Although this idea belongs to psychology rather than biology, it evokes a beautiful image nonetheless. Life is sustained by invisible connections far more often than by anything our eyes can readily perceive. Among insects, those invisible connections take the form of chemical molecules. An individual ant does not need to understand the colony's entire strategy. It simply responds accurately to the signal immediately before it. A honeybee does not need to know how many members live within the hive or exactly how much honey remains. It only needs to follow the chemical guidance available in that particular moment. The remarkable part is this: when tens of thousands of individuals each perform their own small task correctly, an extraordinary order emerges naturally. In modern science, this phenomenon is known as emergence, the appearance of complex systems arising from countless simple interactions. Nature seems remarkably fond of this principle. Rather than creating one enormous brain to control everything, it allows thousands of tiny brains to coordinate through a shared language. This is one of the reasons why pheromone communication in insects has reached a level of sophistication that few other groups of animals can rival. Across hundreds of millions of years of evolution, insects have continuously refined their chemical communication systems. They have evolved specialized glands, capable of producing a wide variety of chemical mixtures. At the same time, they have developed sensory organs of astonishing sensitivity. In many moth species, only a handful of pheromone molecules, dispersed throughout an enormous volume of air, is enough to trigger the search for a mate. For ants, a chemical trail so faint that human beings could never detect it becomes a clearly marked highway leading directly to food. All of this invites us to reconsider how nature defines the idea of strength. Human beings often associate strength with size, speed, or powerful sounds. Nature repeatedly demonstrates something quite different. A signal of extraordinary precision is often far more effective than one that is merely loud. Perhaps this offers us a gentle lesson as well. In our own lives, we sometimes believe that only dramatic actions create meaningful change. Yet if we observe nature with enough patience, we begin to see that many of the most important transformations begin almost invisibly. A tiny seed may one day become a vast forest. A single drop of water may contribute to the making of a mighty river. And one small chemical molecule may coordinate the activities of an entire society numbering in the millions. There is a quiet beauty in seeing the world this way. It encourages us to slow down. It reminds us that the value of something is not determined by how easily it can be seen, but by the influence it quietly leaves behind. Perhaps this is why insects have never needed elaborate displays. They do not argue. They do not persuade one another with speeches. They do not try to prove that they are more important than their companions. They simply respond to signals that evolution has refined over hundreds of millions of years. And somehow, it is precisely this simplicity that produces an effectiveness capable of astonishing even modern scientists. Perhaps the next time we quietly watch a line of ants marching through the evening light, or listen to the gentle hum of bees drifting across a field of flowers, we will no longer see them merely as tiny creatures. Instead, we may recognize before us a silent civilization, where every individual participates in an immense chemical conversation that humanity has only just begun to understand. In the next part of our journey, we will meet the remarkable insect that transformed the entire history of pheromone research, the silkworm moth. It was through this humble creature that scientists first succeeded in isolating a pheromone, opening the door to one of the most fascinating fields in modern biology. Part 6. The silkworm moth. As night gently settles in and the sounds of the world grow softer, perhaps this is the perfect moment to meet a small creature that forever changed the way humanity understands the invisible language of life. It is neither the strongest animal nor one blessed with a large brain or an extraordinary body. It is simply the silkworm moth, quietly drifting through the darkness, seemingly no different from thousands of other insects. Yet from those delicate wings emerged one of the most important discoveries in modern biology. Sometimes, the history of science resembles the story of our own lives. The greatest discoveries do not always begin with grand events. More often, they begin with the patience to observe something that almost everyone else has overlooked. For centuries, people watched silkworm moths appear during the breeding season. They noticed that males could locate females across astonishing distances, even in complete darkness. This seemed to defy ordinary understanding. They could not see one another. They could not call out through sound as birds and mammals do. So what guided these remarkable encounters? That seemingly simple question occupied scientists for decades. Then, in the middle of the 20th century, the German biochemist Adolf Butenandt and his colleagues undertook a task that many at the time considered nearly impossible. They collected hundreds of thousands of female silkworm moths to extract an unimaginably small amount of the chemical substance released from glands near the tip of the female's abdomens. After years of painstaking work, they succeeded in isolating the first molecule ever identified by science as a pheromone. They named it bombicol. That moment marked far more than the discovery of a new chemical compound. It was as though humanity had finally found the first dictionary capable of translating a language that nature had been speaking for hundreds of millions of years. Bombicol is an extraordinarily small molecule. Looking only at its chemical structure, few would imagine it capable of producing such astonishing effects. But nature has never measured power by size. An incredibly tiny amount of bombicol released into the night air is sufficient to send a male moth several kilometers away on a determined search for its mate. There is something deeply humbling about this. Human beings invented telescopes to observe distant stars and microscopes to reveal invisible bacteria. Yet a small moth naturally possesses the ability to detect chemical molecules that remain entirely beyond our own perception. The secret lies within its antennae. If you look closely at a silkworm moth, you will notice a pair of broad, feathery antennae extending gracefully from its head. To us, they may seem like little more than decorative features. From a biological perspective, however, they are among the most sophisticated chemical sensors evolution has ever produced. Covering the surface of each antenna are tens of thousands of microscopic sensory structures. Within them are receptors exquisitely specialized to recognize the precise shape of the bombicol molecule. They resemble countless tiny locks, each patiently waiting for its one perfectly matching key. The moment only a few bombicol molecules touch those receptors, the moth's nervous system springs into action. There is no need to think. No learning is required. No previous experience is necessary. Everything appears to have been written into the quiet symphony of evolution itself. And then another remarkable wonder begins. Rather than flying directly toward the female, the male moth follows a zigzag path. Viewed from above, the flight may seem random, almost uncertain, yet it is, in fact, an extraordinarily intelligent strategy. The air is never completely still. Gentle currents and invisible turbulence continually break the bombicol molecules into scattered pockets, rather than allowing them to form one smooth, uninterrupted trail. Each time the moth encounters the scent, it flies upwind. When the signal disappears, it sweeps to one side, searching until it finds the chemical plume again. Then it turns once more toward the center as the signal returns. That zigzag movement is not hesitation. It is an ongoing conversation between the moth and its environment. Perhaps this invites us to reflect upon the way human beings search for meaning in their own lives. Very few of us reach our destination by traveling in a perfectly straight line. We move forward, sometimes step back, occasionally wander in unexpected directions, before discovering the path that truly belongs to us. From the outside, our journeys may appear uncertain or winding, yet perhaps, like the silkworm moth, we are simply following subtle signals that we have not yet learned how to name. Carl Gustav Jung devoted much of his life to exploring the forces that operate beneath the surface of consciousness. He believed that human beings are guided not only by clear thoughts but also by hidden motivations, enduring symbols, and unconscious patterns that we seldom recognize directly. Observing the silkworm moth does not prove Jung's theories, yet it evokes a familiar feeling. Not every form of guidance unfolds within the light of conscious awareness. Time and again, nature reveals that invisible forces can lead to astonishingly precise journeys. The discovery of bombicol quickly expanded far beyond the study of the silkworm moth itself. It opened the door to an entirely new scientific discipline, the biology of chemical communication. Soon afterward, researchers began identifying pheromones in ants, honeybees, termites, beetles, fruit flies, and countless other organisms. Gradually, they came to realize that nature did not possess merely a handful of chemical signals, but rather an immense library filled with invisible messages. These discoveries eventually found practical applications in agriculture, allowing scientists and farmers to monitor and manage insect pests without relying exclusively on chemical pesticides. They also deepened our understanding of evolution, animal behavior, and the remarkable ways in which insect societies organize themselves. Yet perhaps the greatest significance of this discovery reaches far beyond the laboratory. It reminds us that the world is always larger than the limits of our own perception. What our eyes cannot see is not necessarily absent. What our ears cannot hear does not mean that nature has fallen silent. Behind every gentle breeze, countless messages may be traveling unseen. Behind every subtle movement of a living creature lies an evolutionary story stretching back hundreds of millions of years. And perhaps, when we choose to slow down to observe with greater curiosity and genuine humility, the world begins to reveal stories that were always there, quietly waiting to be noticed. In the next part of our journey, we will step into an even more extraordinary society, the world of ants, where millions of individuals coordinate their lives through invisible chemical highways, creating one of nature's most beautiful examples of collective intelligence. Part 7. Ants and the wisdom of the colony. When we observe an ant colony from a distance, we usually see nothing more than tiny dark specks quietly moving across the ground. They travel in long, orderly lines, weaving through blades of grass, climbing over stones, and disappearing beneath the earth as though each one were following a carefully prepared plan. The scene is so familiar that we rarely stop to ask ourselves, how can thousands, even millions of such tiny creatures coordinate their actions with such remarkable precision? Who gives the orders? Who decides which path to follow? Where food should be gathered? When to attack? Or when it is time to retreat? Nature's answer is wonderfully surprising. There is no king issuing commands. There is no central brain directing the entire colony. There are no maps, no written plans, and no voices rising above the crowd. The only thing connecting every individual is a network of invisible chemical trails left behind as each ant moves. It is pheromones that transform a collection of countless tiny creatures into a system capable of adapting, learning, and solving problems so effectively, in fact, that scientists today regard ant colonies as one of the finest examples of swarm intelligence found anywhere in nature. If we look more closely, we discover that every journey within an ant colony begins in a remarkably simple way. A worker ant leaves the nest in search of food. At first, it walks almost randomly, exploring patches of ground, leaves, and cracks between stones. But when fortune leads it to a valuable food source, its first instinct is not to remain there alone. Instead, as it returns home, it quietly deposits a trail of pheromones upon the ground. It is like weaving an invisible thread between the nest and the newly discovered food. To human eyes, the ground appears completely unchanged. We cannot see the trail. But to other ants, it is clearer than any road sign could ever be. With a gentle touch of their antennae against the surface, they detect the chemical trace left by their companion. One after another, they begin following the same route until the colony gradually moves together in a shared direction. What makes this system truly remarkable is that it is never rigid. If the food source proves abundant, more and more ants travel along the same path. Each one reinforces the trail by adding fresh pheromones, making the signals steadily stronger. What began as a route discovered by a single individual soon becomes the colony's main highway. Yet when the food source is exhausted, the opposite quietly unfolds. Fewer ants travel that route. Fresh pheromones are no longer added. Over time, the chemical molecules naturally evaporate. The trail slowly fades away until it disappears completely. No one needs to erase the road. Nature simply allows time to do the work. There is something profoundly beautiful about this process. What remains useful is strengthened. What is no longer needed quietly disappears. Nature does not preserve old pathways merely out of habit. Instead, it allows the present moment to determine what deserves to continue. If we pause to reflect, we may notice that a similar principle exists within our own minds. Thoughts repeated again and again gradually become habits. Emotions nurtured day after day slowly shape the way we see the world. Meanwhile, whatever we no longer give our attention gradually fades from memory. Like pheromone trails upon the earth, the human mind creates pathways of its own. Each time we repeat a particular action or pattern of thinking, that pathway becomes a little clearer. Carl Gustav Jung devoted many years to exploring how unconscious patterns influence conscious life. Although he never studied ants or pheromones, observing an ant colony invites a remarkably similar reflection. Much of what creates order does not require a single commander. Sometimes harmony emerges from countless small, quiet, and continuous interactions. This principle becomes even clearer in what biologists call worker recruitment. When an especially rich food source is discovered, pheromone levels along the trail increase rapidly. The stronger the trail becomes, the more ants choose to follow it. The more ants that follow, the stronger the signal grows. A powerful positive feedback loop naturally emerges. No individual ever decides, "Let us send another 1,000 workers." That decision seems to arise spontaneously from the chemical communication network itself. Viewed through the lens of mathematics, this is an astonishing optimization system. Viewed through the lens of philosophy, it gently reminds us that the strength of a community does not always rest upon an exceptional individual. Often, it depends upon each member responding appropriately to the information it receives. Among fire ants, pheromones serve an even more urgent purpose. When the colony comes under attack, the first soldier ants release alarm pheromones. Within moments, thousands of individuals shift into a state of readiness. Even more remarkable, the intensity of the chemical signal helps regulate the scale of the response. The greater the danger, the stronger the signal becomes, and the more defenders join the effort. Nature has created an extraordinarily effective system for distributing its forces without the need for a single general. Leafcutter ants carry chemical communication to an entirely different level. They do not actually eat the leaves they harvest. Instead, they use those leaves to cultivate a specialized fungus, which serves as the colony's primary food source. Day and night, thousands of workers transport leaf fragments along established routes. Scientists sometimes compare this network to a modern transportation system, where every roadway is maintained entirely through pheromone communication. There are no traffic signs, no intersections controlled by lights, and yet the flow of resources rarely comes to a halt. Then there are the extraordinary army ants, perhaps one of the most striking examples of swarm intelligence in nature. Unlike many other ant species, they build no permanent nest. Instead, the entire colony remains constantly on the move, forming living highways that stretch across tropical forests. Hundreds of thousands of individuals advance together like a flowing river. The astonishing part is that no single ant understands the colony's overall plan. Each individual responds only to the signals immediately surrounding it. Yet from countless simple responses emerges an astonishing level of order that leaves every observer in awe. Perhaps this is the most beautiful lesson ants offer us tonight. Nature does not always require a leader to create harmony. Sometimes, what matters most is connection. When every individual responds faithfully to the signals before it while remaining in harmony with the larger community, a greater intelligence naturally begins to emerge. As we watch a quiet line of ants passing beneath the moonlight, we may feel that we are looking at a miniature reflection of life itself. Each individual is small, almost anonymous, yet when united through invisible messages, they create a strength far greater than any one of them could ever possess alone. Perhaps this is nature's gentle whisper to us. Every form of life is sustained by connections that ordinary eyes cannot see. And it is within those silent connections that the world's most enduring beauty quietly comes into being. Part 8. Honeybees and the Chemistry of Society. As the last rays of sunlight disappear beyond fields of wild flowers and evening settles into quiet stillness, tens of thousands of honeybees continue their work. From the outside, a beehive may appear to be nothing more than a bustling cluster of tiny insects constantly leaving and returning. But if we could somehow shrink ourselves and step into that hidden world, we would discover one of the most sophisticated and remarkably stable societies that nature has ever created. Most astonishing of all, its order is not maintained through laws, commands, or spoken language. Instead, it is woven together by an invisible network of chemical signals, where each pheromone molecule is like a gentle whisper, helping the entire community remain in harmony. Perhaps if ant colonies reveal the power of collective intelligence, then a beehive reveals the beauty of balance. Every individual has its own role, yet none exists apart from the community. A worker bee spends her entire life caring for larvae, building honeycomb, gathering nectar, and defending her colony. A drone appears only during a particular stage of the reproductive cycle, and at the center of this extraordinary society is the queen, the only individual capable of sustaining reproduction over the long term. Yet what is truly fascinating is that the queen does not maintain her position through strength or domination. She leads the colony through something far more subtle: queen pheromone. Imagine queen pheromone as a slow, gentle melody gradually spreading throughout the hive. The queen continuously releases a unique blend of specialized chemical compounds. Worker bees that come into contact with her carry those signals throughout the colony by touching antennae, grooming one another, and exchanging food. Before long, nearly every bee within the hive has received the message. The queen is healthy. The colony is stable. The remarkable part is that queen pheromone does far more than announce the queen's presence. It regulates nearly every aspect of colony life. When this chemical signal remains strong and consistent, worker bees continue their tasks, larvae develop normally, and the reproductive systems of other females remain suppressed. One invisible signal, quietly enables tens of thousands of individuals to function almost as though they were a single living organism. Perhaps this invites us to reflect upon a gentle truth about our own lives. Not every source of stability comes from something dramatic or easily seen. Sometimes what keeps a family, a community, or even a human heart from falling apart is something almost invisible, a trustworthy presence, a feeling of safety, or the quiet rhythm of familiar moments repeated day after day. Yet nature has never built systems that cannot adapt. The beauty of a beehive lies not in rigid permanence, but in its extraordinary capacity for change. If the queen grows old, dies, or simply stops producing enough queen pheromone, the entire colony quickly senses that something has changed. No bee stands up to announce, "We need a new queen." And yet, somehow, the whole community recognizes the absence of that chemical message. That is when another remarkable process quietly begins. Certain young larvae are selected and fed exclusively on royal jelly, a unique nutritional substance that activates the developmental pathway leading to queenhood. What makes this even more fascinating is that the difference between a queen and a worker bee is not written into their genes. They possess almost identical DNA. It is nutrition, together with chemical signaling, that determines which path their development will follow. Perhaps this reminds us that potential is not determined entirely at birth. It is also shaped by environment, opportunity, and the signals we receive as we grow. In many ways, this echoes Carl Gustav Jung's understanding of human development. Jung believed that each individual carries within themselves possibilities that have not yet been realized. The journey toward maturity is not about becoming someone else, but about gradually bringing into existence what has always lived quietly within. In the world of honeybees, that journey is chemical as much as biological. A young queen does not immediately become the center of the colony. As she matures, her body gradually develops the ability to produce a complete and stable queen pheromone. Only when that signal becomes sufficiently strong does the colony truly recognize her as its new queen. There is something quietly profound in this. Leadership here is not established through force or authority. It emerges through the ability to produce a signal with which the entire community naturally comes into harmony. Yet life within the hive is not defined only by peace. Nature has always contained danger, and when danger appears, the chemical language of bees takes on an entirely different tone. If a worker bee is attacked by a predator or threatened near the hive, she releases an alarm pheromone. Interestingly, one of the primary components of this signal smells surprisingly similar to ripe bananas to the human nose. For that reason, experienced beekeepers often avoid bringing bananas near active hives, since the scent may sometimes provoke a stronger defensive response from the bees. To a bee, however, it is not merely an odor, it is an urgent warning. Within seconds, hundreds of nearby workers fly toward the source of the signal to defend their home. What moves us most is knowing that many worker bees effectively sacrifice themselves in doing so. When a honeybee stings a mammal, the barbed stinger often becomes lodged in the skin. As the bee pulls away, severe injury to her abdomen follows, and she usually dies shortly afterward. Nature has accepted this sacrifice as part of the colony's strategy for survival. Viewed through the lens of evolution, it is a mechanism that protects the hive. Viewed quietly, it also reveals something deeply beautiful. Sometimes life continues because individuals are willing to place the well-being of the community above their own. Perhaps that is why honeybee colonies inspire feelings that are both scientific and deeply poetic. They are not merely societies of insects. They are living demonstrations that cooperation can create something far greater than the abilities of any individual alone. If we look more deeply still, the entire hive begins to resemble a single living body. Each bee is like one tiny cell. Queen pheromone resembles the bloodstream, carrying information throughout the organism. Alarm pheromones resemble the nervous system, responding instantly whenever injury occurs. Chemical signals circulate continuously, keeping the entire colony in a state of dynamic balance. And perhaps this is nature's gentle reminder to us tonight. The most enduring strength does not always arise from power or control. Sometimes it grows from connection, from the quiet harmony shared among individuals who may appear small on their own. Like a beehive softly singing its invisible symphony of chemical messages, our own lives are also sustained by countless unseen connections that our eyes may never perceive, but that the heart can still recognize, if only we slow down long enough to listen. Part 9. Other insect societies. As night gradually settles over the forest, everything seems to grow quieter. The wind slows as it passes through the treetops. The last traces of daylight fade beyond the horizon, and to human perception, nature appears to be drifting peacefully into sleep. But if we could shrink ourselves to the size of a grain of sand and step into the world of insects, we would discover an entirely different reality. Within that apparent silence, millions of messages continue to flow without interruption. There are no voices, no language as we understand it, only invisible chemical molecules quietly spreading through the environment, connecting countless individuals in an ancient symphony that nature began composing hundreds of millions of years ago. In the previous parts of our journey, we met ants and honeybees, perhaps the best-known examples of the remarkable power of pheromones. Yet, as we widen our perspective, we discover that chemical communication is by no means limited to only a few extraordinary species. Nearly the entire insect world relies upon this invisible language, each species refining it across millions of years of evolution to suit its own unique way of life. Perhaps this is one of nature's most beautiful qualities. Nature does not create a single pattern and impose it upon every living creature. Instead, it offers one fundamental principle, and each species composes its own unique dialect. Let us begin with termites, the quiet architects of the underground world. When we see a towering termite mound rising from a grassy plain, it is difficult to imagine that beneath it lies an entire city inhabited by millions of individuals. Interwoven tunnels, chambers for raising young, food storage rooms, and remarkably efficient ventilation systems all exist without a single blueprint. What keeps this vast society functioning is not the command of one ruler, but the continuous exchange of pheromones. These chemical signals allow termites to recognize members of their colony, determine their own roles, and respond to every change within their environment. There is something extraordinary about realizing that such a crowded society can maintain harmony without anything resembling human language. Perhaps true understanding does not always begin with words. Then we encounter bumblebees, the gentle relatives of honeybees. Their colonies are much smaller, yet they too are connected through delicate chemical signals. Bumblebees use pheromones to recognize their nests, mark flowers that have already been visited, and coordinate reproductive activities. Every foraging flight is not only a search for nectar, but also an opportunity to leave behind invisible traces that help other bees make better decisions. In their world, pheromones are like quiet messages written upon the wind. No one can see them, yet everyone understands them. Even creatures as tiny as aphids possess astonishing systems of chemical communication. When attacked by ladybugs or other predators, an aphid releases an alarm pheromone. Within moments, nearby aphids respond together, dropping from the plant or seeking shelter. This is not merely the reaction of isolated individuals. It is an entire community responding collectively to a shared signal. Once again, nature reminds us that life is always searching for the fastest possible way to share vital information. Sometimes only a few seconds determine the difference between survival and disappearance. Among beetles, pheromones tell yet another story. Some species use them to attract mates across impressive distances. Others employ them to gather hundreds of individuals around newly discovered food sources. Certain bark beetles even coordinate attacks on large trees, by continuously releasing aggregation pheromones that recruit more and more companions. A single beetle has little chance of penetrating the thick bark of a healthy tree. Hundreds acting together in response to one chemical message become an entirely different force. Perhaps nature quietly reminds us once again that strength does not always belong to the individual. Sometimes it emerges through connection. Even cockroaches, insects that many people instinctively avoid, possess remarkably sophisticated systems of communication. They rely on pheromones to locate safe shelters, recognize members of their own group, and gather together in suitable hiding places. If a location is sufficiently dark, humid, and secure, chemical signals gradually accumulate there, attracting more individuals over time. Eventually, an entirely new refuge is established, without any individual ever planning or organizing it. Here we encounter another principle that appears again and again throughout nature. Great decisions often arise from countless tiny choices. Then there is the familiar fruit fly, one of the most extensively studied organisms in laboratories around the world. For fruit flies, pheromones play essential roles in recognizing sex, selecting appropriate mates, and avoiding unsuitable pairings. Even subtle differences in the chemical composition of the outer body surface can dramatically alter the behavior of another individual. Nature has evolved an extraordinarily precise recognition system in which every molecule carries meaning. If we step back and look at the larger picture, an elegant pattern begins to emerge. Whether we are observing termites, bumblebees, aphids, beetles, cockroaches, or fruit flies, they all rely upon the same fundamental principle. They communicate through chemistry. Yet every species transforms that shared principle into its own language, perfectly adapted to its own way of life. Some species use pheromones to warn of danger. Others use them to gather companions. Some rely on them to recognize members of their own community. Others use them to locate potential mates. Still, others employ them as defensive tools, allowing an entire group to respond together when threats appear. Perhaps what moves us most is not the diversity itself, but the deeper truth it reveals. Every species is striving to preserve connection. Their methods differ, but their purpose remains remarkably similar: to help life continue. Carl Gustav Jung devoted much of his life to exploring the invisible connections within the human mind. He believed that beneath our differences in culture, language, and personal experience lie universal patterns that quietly unite humanity. Pheromones evoke a similar feeling within the living world, not because Jung ever wrote about them, but because they remind us that life is woven together through relationships far more subtle than anything our eyes can perceive. Perhaps that is the most beautiful lesson these insect societies offer us tonight. The world is not sustained by the loudest voices. It is sustained by countless small, patient, and enduring signals. Each chemical molecule is like a gentle whisper. One whisper alone may seem insignificant. Yet when millions of whispers blend together, they become the quiet symphony that keeps forests alive, fields flourishing, and our living planet moving forward in nature's remarkable harmony. Part 10. The role of pheromones in agriculture. When scientists first discovered pheromones, many believed they were simply another fascinating biological phenomenon, a new window into understanding how insects and other animals communicate with one another. Yet, like so many of history's great scientific discoveries, what began with curiosity eventually opened the door to applications capable of transforming the way humanity lives alongside nature. Perhaps this is one of knowledge's greatest gifts. When we learn to listen to nature instead of merely trying to control it, nature often responds with solutions far more elegant than we could have imagined. For centuries, humanity's struggle against agricultural pests followed a familiar pattern. Whenever insects appeared in fields and orchards, we sought to eliminate them with increasingly powerful pesticides. At first, the results seemed encouraging. Crops were protected, harvests improved, and it appeared that we had found the answer. But over time, nature once again revealed its extraordinary capacity to adapt. Many pest species gradually developed resistance to pesticides. Beneficial insects were harmed alongside the pests. The soil, waterways, and entire ecosystems began to bear unintended consequences. Perhaps this was the moment when humanity quietly began asking a different question. Instead of asking, how can we kill more insects? We began asking, is there a way to work with nature's own principles instead of constantly fighting against them? Pheromones offered one of the most hopeful answers. If we look closely, pheromones are not weapons. They do not kill insects. They do not poison the environment. They are simply messages. Messages that insects themselves have been using for millions of years before human beings ever appeared. The remarkable discovery was this: once we understood that language, there was no longer a need to rely solely on force. Instead, we could begin communicating with nature using nature's own language. One of the earliest and most widely adopted applications is the pheromone trap. At first glance, it appears almost surprisingly simple. Inside the trap is only a tiny amount of synthetic pheromone, carefully designed to imitate the scent released by females or another species-specific signal of the target pest. To male insects flying across vast orchards or fields, that artificial signal feels completely authentic. They follow it, enter the trap, and are captured. What makes these traps particularly valuable is that they are not always intended to catch large numbers of insects. In many cases, their primary purpose is simply to tell farmers whether a particular pest has arrived, whether its population is increasing or decreasing, and when its breeding season begins. This represents a remarkably important shift in perspective. Rather than waiting until a problem becomes severe, farmers learn to recognize the earliest signs of change. Just as a physician does not wait until an illness becomes critical before beginning treatment, growers learn to listen to the first quiet whispers coming from their fields. Perhaps the same is true within our own inner lives. Major changes rarely appear without warning. More often, they begin as subtle signals: a lingering weariness, a quiet anxiety, or a habit that slowly begins to change. When we notice those early signs, we often have far greater opportunities to respond wisely. Another application of pheromones is even more subtle. It is known as mating disruption. The idea sounds almost deceptively simple, yet it is remarkably ingenious. Instead of attempting to capture every harmful insect, scientists release large amounts of synthetic pheromones throughout orchards or crop fields. The air becomes saturated with chemical signals identical to those produced by females. The result is surprisingly effective. Male insects become confused. They continue detecting the familiar scent, but they can no longer determine where it originates. Every direction appears equally promising. Every breeze carries the same message. What was once a precise search becomes an invisible maze. When males fail to locate females, successful mating declines, and the next generation of pests is greatly reduced. The remarkable part is that throughout this entire process, there is no need to destroy insects on a massive scale. There is no need to contaminate soil or water. Only the flow of information has been altered. Once again, nature quietly reminds us that changing behavior can sometimes be far more effective than relying upon force. For this reason, pheromones have become increasingly important as tools for reducing dependence on conventional pesticides. This does not mean that crop protection chemicals will disappear entirely. In many situations, they remain necessary for safeguarding harvests. But instead of serving as the first response, they become one tool among many, used only when genuinely needed. One particularly successful example involves controlling codling moths and other fruit-boring pests in apple, pear, peach, and various other orchards. These insects can cause severe crop losses if they are not detected early. With pheromone traps, growers know precisely when adult insects first emerge. This allows them to intervene at the most effective moment rather than applying pesticides according to a fixed calendar. Perhaps this too reflects one of nature's enduring lessons. The right timing is often far more important than simply doing more. From these individual applications emerged a broader philosophy known as integrated pest management, or IPM. IPM is neither a pesticide nor a specialized piece of equipment. It is a way of thinking. Rather than treating every insect as an enemy, IPM views an agricultural field as a living ecosystem. Within that ecosystem are pests, but also natural predators. There are crops, but also microorganisms, healthy soils, water, and countless relationships interwoven together. Pheromones have become an essential part of this approach. They help monitor insect populations. They improve forecasting. They guide decision-making. And they reduce unnecessary interventions. The ultimate goal is not to eliminate insects completely. That would be nearly impossible and ultimately harmful to the ecosystem itself. The true goal is to preserve balance. Perhaps this is one of nature's deepest lessons. We often imagine that strength comes through control. Nature seems to operate according to a different principle. Lasting sustainability does not arise from eliminating everything we dislike. It grows from understanding, careful observation, and learning to live in harmony with principles that existed long before we ourselves arrived. When we see a small pheromone trap hanging quietly among the branches of an orchard, it may appear to be nothing more than a simple farming tool. Yet if we look more deeply, it represents something far more meaningful. It symbolizes a profound shift in humanity's relationship with the natural world. No longer a voice of conquest, but a voice of listening. No longer a struggle based only on force, but a partnership grounded in understanding. And perhaps this also reflects the path of our own inner growth. Just as a farmer learns to recognize the smallest signals within a field, perhaps we, too, must learn to notice the quietest signals within our own hearts and minds. Only by understanding the subtle processes unfolding beneath the surface can we cultivate a lasting inner balance, much like the balance that nature has quietly sustained for hundreds of millions of years. Part 11. Do humans have pheromones? As our journey through the world of pheromones gradually brings us closer to ourselves, a quiet question naturally begins to arise. Do human beings actually communicate through pheromones? After witnessing ant colonies building invisible chemical highways, honeybee hives functioning as though they were a single living organism, and moths finding one another in complete darkness, guided only by a few invisible molecules, it is difficult not to wonder whether we, too, still carry a trace of that ancient language within us. It is a question that has occupied scientists for decades. What makes it especially fascinating is that, unlike many other subjects in biology, the answer remains incomplete even today. And perhaps that uncertainty reflects one of science's greatest strengths. Science does not exist to reach quick conclusions. It exists to ask questions, to test hypotheses with patience, and to accept that some mysteries require far more time before they can truly be understood. If we wish to answer the question, do humans have pheromones? We must first understand what the scientific term pheromone actually means. In biology, a substance can only be classified as a pheromone if it satisfies several rigorous criteria simultaneously. First, it must be naturally produced and released by an individual. Second, it must be detected by another member of the same species through a specific biological mechanism. Most importantly, it must reliably produce a consistent behavioral or physiological response that can be repeatedly demonstrated under controlled conditions. In other words, when the same signal is presented under the same circumstances, the receiving individuals should respond in a predictable and reproducible way. For many insects and numerous mammals, these standards have been clearly demonstrated. When scientists attempt to apply those same criteria to humans, however, the picture immediately becomes far more complex. What makes human beings different? Perhaps the answer lies in the human brain itself. An ant responds to a chemical signal with almost no conscious deliberation. A male moth follows the scent of bombicol, as though the entire journey had already been written into its nervous system. Human beings are different. Between an environmental signal and a resulting action lies an immense landscape of memory, emotion, personal experience, culture, belief, and learning. We do not simply respond to the world as it is. We respond to the meaning we assign to it. This, too, was one of the central ideas explored throughout the life of Carl Gustav Jung. Jung believed that human experience is shaped not merely by objective reality, but also by reality as interpreted through the unconscious, through symbols, and through the accumulated experiences of a lifetime. Although Jung never studied pheromones, his perspective helps us understand why identifying human pheromones is such a difficult scientific challenge. Even if such signals exist, they must pass through an extraordinarily complex brain before becoming emotions, perceptions, or behavior. Consider something as simple as a familiar scent. One person smells freshly baked bread and is immediately transported back to the kitchen of childhood. Someone else experiences no particular emotion at all. A certain perfume may bring feelings of warmth because it reminds one person of someone they love. To another individual, the very same fragrance may evoke sadness because it is connected with an entirely different memory. This reminds us that the human sense of smell is far more than a biological detector. It is also a doorway into memory and emotion. For this reason, researchers studying possible human pheromones must be extremely careful to distinguish between an innate biological response and one that has been learned through life experience. Over the years, 3 major areas of research have received particular attention. The first involves androstenedione, a steroid-derived compound found in male perspiration. Some studies have suggested that this compound may produce subtle effects on mood, alertness, or activity in certain brain regions under specific experimental conditions. However, findings across laboratories have not been consistent. Many other studies have failed to observe the same effect. A second area focuses on estratrotrinol, a compound related to estrogen. Like androstenedione, it has been proposed that estratrotrinol might influence certain aspects of social perception. Yet the available evidence remains limited, and at present, there is insufficient proof to classify it as a true human pheromone according to the accepted biological definition. Perhaps the most widely known hypothesis concerns menstrual synchrony, often associated with the research of Martha McClintock. In 1971, McClintock observed that the menstrual cycles of certain women living together appeared to become more closely aligned over time. She proposed that chemical signals might contribute to this phenomenon. It was a compelling idea and quickly attracted widespread public attention. Yet during the decades that followed, larger studies, using more rigorous statistical methods, generally failed to produce consistent evidence supporting menstrual synchrony. Today, most researchers conclude that there is currently insufficient evidence to regard menstrual synchrony as proof of human pheromones. Perhaps this illustrates one of science's most valuable principles. An attractive hypothesis does not automatically become scientific fact. It must withstand repeated testing by independent research groups under a wide variety of conditions. This is precisely why we frequently encounter advertisements promoting so-called pheromone perfumes that claim to make people instantly more attractive. While such claims are not supported by the current scientific consensus under the strict definition of human pheromones, that does not mean the human sense of smell lacks influence. Quite the opposite. Scents undoubtedly affect our emotions, memories, stress levels, and perceptions of other people. Yet those effects usually arise from an extraordinarily complex interaction among biology, personal experience, culture, learning, and context. They differ fundamentally from the pheromone systems demonstrated in many insects, where a specific chemical signal reliably produces a specific, predictable response. Perhaps, as we reach this point in our journey, we discover that the answer makes the world no less wonderful. If anything, it makes human beings fascinating in an entirely different way. Many animals are guided primarily by inherited chemical signals. Human beings, by contrast, live within an intricate web of memory, symbols, language, culture, imagination, and experiences accumulated throughout a lifetime. Perhaps this is nature's gentle reminder to us. Every species has evolved its own way of connecting with the world. For insects, that connection may be built largely upon pheromones. For human beings, biology is only one part of a far richer tapestry that also includes meaning, memory, relationships, and emotion. And perhaps it is precisely this meeting between our ancient biological instincts and the extraordinary depth of human consciousness that makes the exploration of ourselves one of the greatest mysteries science continues to pursue with patience, humility, and quiet curiosity. Part 12. Pheromones in mammals. As night gradually settles in and the familiar sounds of daytime quietly give way to stillness, nature seems to enter an entirely different rhythm. For human beings, this is a time for rest. Yet for countless small creatures, the night is when invisible conversations become more active than ever. There are no voices calling across the darkness, no brilliant flashes of light, and no signs that human eyes can easily perceive. Instead, millions of chemical messages drift silently through the air, across the ground, and among the trunks of trees, connecting individuals into communities that function with extraordinary precision. After exploring the remarkable worlds of ants and honeybees, perhaps the best-known examples of pheromone communication, we might easily assume that such systems are rare exceptions in nature. But as we continue widening our perspective, we discover something even more extraordinary. From termite cities hidden beneath the earth, to gentle bumblebees moving among wildflowers, tiny aphids resting upon leaves, beetles wandering through ancient forests, cockroaches sheltering in darkness, and fruit flies circling ripe fruit, countless species rely upon the same ancient language. They do not all speak the same dialect, yet they all follow the same fundamental principle. Life is sustained through the exchange of invisible messages. Perhaps what makes nature so beautiful is not that every species is the same, but that one universal principle can be expressed in countless different ways. Let us begin with termites, the quiet architects of the underground world. From the outside, a termite mound appears to be little more than a lifeless tower of earth. Hidden within it, however, lies a bustling city, inhabited by hundreds of thousands, sometimes even millions of individuals. There are chambers for raising young, rooms for storing food, carefully engineered ventilation tunnels, and protected quarters reserved for the queen. What is truly astonishing is that no single termite possesses a blueprint of the entire structure. Each individual simply responds to the chemical signals surrounding it. Pheromones allow termites to recognize members of their colony, identify their own tasks, navigate through the nest, and preserve the order of the community. From a human perspective, such a society almost seems impossible. Yet nature demonstrates that complexity does not always require centralized control. Sometimes harmony emerges from countless small interactions, quietly repeated over and over again. Elsewhere in the forest, bumblebees tell a gentler story. Unlike honeybees, they do not live in enormous colonies. Their communities are smaller, yet they too are connected through delicate chemical signals. Bumblebees use pheromones to recognize their nests, mark flowers they have already visited, and communicate the condition of their colony. A flower that has recently been foraged carries a chemical signature that discourages other bees from returning too soon. It is an elegant way of sharing information, requiring no words, no competition, only natural cooperation. Perhaps this, too, offers a quiet lesson for us. When information is shared at the right moment and in the right way, everyone benefits. Nature seems always to favor balance over rivalry. Tiny aphids, seemingly fragile before every danger, also possess a remarkable communication system. When one aphid is attacked by a ladybug or another predator, it releases an alarm pheromone. Within moments, nearby aphids stop feeding, move to the underside of leaves, or simply drop to the ground to escape. There are no cries for help, no visible warning signals. Only an extraordinarily small number of molecules is enough to alter the behavior of the entire group. This reminds us that, in nature, the value of a message is not determined by how large it is, but by whether it arrives at exactly the right moment. A small signal, delivered in time, may save an entire community. For beetles, pheromones tell a different story. Many species spend most of their lives alone. Yet when they discover a suitable food source or the breeding season arrives, they release chemical signals that attract others of their kind. Certain bark beetles can recruit hundreds or even thousands of companions to attack a single large tree. One beetle alone could never penetrate the tree's protective bark. But when many individuals respond to the same signal, they become a force of remarkable strength. Here, pheromones are more than invitations. They are the invisible bond that transforms countless individual efforts into one collective action. Even cockroaches, insects often viewed with discomfort by human beings, possess a surprisingly sophisticated social life. During the day, they prefer gathering in dark, humid, and sheltered places. Interestingly, they do not choose these refuges entirely at random. Individuals already occupying a suitable shelter leave pheromones upon its surfaces, unintentionally sending a simple message: this place is safe. The more cockroaches that gather there, the stronger the chemical signal becomes, attracting still more individuals. A community forms not because anyone planned it, but because each individual responds to subtle environmental cues. Finally, we arrive at the familiar fruit fly, a tiny creature that has contributed enormously to modern science. For decades, fruit flies have served as one of biology's most important research organisms for understanding genetics and behavior. Scientists have discovered that they use pheromones to recognize sex, distinguish members of their own species, select appropriate mates, and even avoid unsuitable pairings. A very small change in the chemical composition covering the body's surface can completely alter another fly's response. Nature has evolved an astonishingly precise recognition system in which every molecule carries its own meaning. When we step back and look at the broader picture, something truly remarkable emerges. Whether we observe termites, bumblebees, aphids, beetles, cockroaches, or fruit flies, every species uses pheromones in its own distinctive way. Some use them to warn of danger. Some use them to gather companions. Some use them to recognize members of their own community. Some use them to locate mates and ensure the continuation of their species. Others rely upon them as a defensive network that enables the entire group to respond together whenever the environment changes. What is most thought-provoking is that, despite these different purposes, they all serve one common need: to preserve connection. Nature seems to understand that no individual can flourish for long in complete isolation. Life thrives most fully when every organism is able to exchange information with the world around it. Carl Gustav Jung devoted much of his life to exploring the invisible connections within the human mind. He believed that beneath our differences in language, culture, and personality lies a deeper level that quietly unites us all. Pheromones were not the subject of Jung's work. Yet when we observe the world of insects, we are reminded of a similar insight. What sustains life is not merely the strength of each individual, but the quiet relationships that bind them together. Perhaps this is nature's gentle gift to us tonight. The world is not sustained only by what is grand or easily seen. Behind every peaceful forest, every meadow filled with flowers, and every single leaf, silent conversations are constantly unfolding. And perhaps, if we learn to slow down, to listen more carefully, and to approach nature with greater humility, we may also begin to recognize the invisible signals within our own lives, those small, easily overlooked moments that quietly guide every journey of growth and transformation. Part 3. Pheromones in reptiles. When most of us think of snakes, the image that comes to mind is often a silent creature gliding across a bed of dry leaves, its eyes almost motionless, while its forked tongue repeatedly flicks in and out with an air of mystery. Across many cultures, snakes have long been associated with symbols of mystery, rebirth, and forces that seem to lie beyond ordinary human understanding. Carl Gustav Jung also regarded the serpent as one of humanity's oldest archetypal symbols, appearing across civilizations to represent the deeper layers of the unconscious and the process of inner transformation. Yet if we gently set symbolism aside for a moment and look at snakes through the lens of modern biology, we discover that what makes them truly remarkable is not their mysterious appearance, but the extraordinary way they perceive the world, a world shaped not primarily by images or sounds, but by invisible chemical traces. For human beings, vision is usually our dominant sense. We recognize faces, read books, admire the night sky, and navigate our surroundings largely through our eyes. Snakes have followed a very different evolutionary path. Many species do not possess particularly sharp eyesight, and their hearing is also relatively limited compared with that of mammals or birds. Yet nature rarely leaves any organism poorly adapted. When one sense offers fewer advantages, others gradually become more refined over millions of years of evolution. For snakes, that remarkable refinement lies in their ability to read the world through chemistry. If you watch a snake with patience, you will notice that its forked tongue is almost constantly in motion. To many people, this appears strange or even unsettling. In reality, every flick of the tongue is the snake's way of sampling its surroundings. Tiny chemical particles suspended in the air or resting upon the ground cling to the two tips of the tongue. The tongue then carries those particles into a remarkable sensory structure located in the roof of the mouth, known as the Jacobson's organ, or more formally, the vomeronasal organ. If the human nose is like a doorway into the world of scent, then the Jacobson's organ is something closer to a miniature chemical laboratory. Within this remarkable organ, chemical molecules are analyzed with astonishing precision. A snake does not simply detect that something smells. It can distinguish the scent of prey, predators, members of its own species, and, most importantly, during the breeding season, potential mates. What makes this system even more fascinating is that the forked tongue itself evolved with a remarkable purpose. Because its two tips collect chemical samples from slightly different locations, each side gathers information from a different part of the environment. The snake's brain compares the signals arriving from both sides and determines the direction from which the chemical source originates. In many ways, this resembles the way human beings use two ears to locate the direction of a sound. The difference is that snakes do not listen through sound. They listen through chemistry. There is something quietly beautiful about the way nature solves the same challenge through entirely different solutions. What human beings accomplish through eyes and ears, snakes accomplish through their tongues and chemical receptors. It reminds us that there is never only one way to experience the world. Every species evolves the abilities best suited to the environment in which it lives. One of the most remarkable examples of pheromone communication among reptiles can be found in the common garter snake. Each spring across parts of North America, after emerging from winter hibernation, tens of thousands of garter snakes leave their underground dens almost simultaneously. The sight creates one of nature's most extraordinary spectacles. Hundreds of males may surround a single female, forming enormous mating balls in which every male attempts to reach the individual, producing the chemical signal. What guides them? Not color, not sound, but pheromones. The female releases a unique blend of chemical compounds across the surface of her body. These molecules spread into the surrounding air and remain upon the ground. The males repeatedly flick their forked tongues through the environment, collecting chemical samples that are analyzed by the Jacobson's organ, allowing them to follow the invisible trail directly to its source. To us, this may appear to be nothing more than instinctive behavior. Yet beneath that apparent simplicity lies millions of years of natural selection. Individuals that detected these chemical signals more accurately enjoyed greater reproductive success. Across countless generations, the system became steadily more refined. Perhaps what invites reflection is not the pheromone itself, but the extraordinary patience of evolution. Nature does not create perfection overnight. Every remarkable ability is shaped little by little across spans of time so vast that they challenge even our imagination. When we watch a snake gently flick its tongue into the air, we may casually think that it is simply smelling its surroundings. In truth, it is reading a story. Across the forest floor may remain the chemical traces of a mouse that passed only moments before. Upon the branch of a nearby tree may linger the scent of another snake. During the breeding season, the entire forest becomes covered by an invisible web of messages, understood only by those whose bodies have evolved the language to interpret them. Perhaps this gently reminds us of something about our own lives. The world almost certainly contains far more information than we are capable of perceiving. Not because we lack intelligence, but because every species has evolved to experience only a small portion of reality. Human beings perceive colors invisible to many other animals, yet we cannot naturally read the chemical stories that snakes interpret with effortless precision. The world is not poorer because our senses are limited. Reality itself has always been far larger than the experience of any one species. Carl Gustav Jung devoted many years to exploring the deeper layers of the human mind that conscious awareness rarely reaches. He believed that beneath the familiar surface of consciousness lies an immense inner landscape that occasionally reveals itself through dreams, symbols, and intuition. Observing snakes evokes a similar feeling. They quietly remind us that beneath the visible world flow countless unseen currents. Nature has never consisted only of what we can see. It also consists of chemical signals, subtle patterns, hidden connections, and silent principles that reveal themselves only to those willing to observe with patience. Perhaps this is the most beautiful gift snakes offer us tonight. Not a lesson about mystery, nor a lesson about fear, but a lesson in humility before all that remains unknown. Each gentle flick of a forked tongue reminds us that nature is always speaking in ways far beyond human imagination. And perhaps, just as Jung believed that understanding the mind begins with acknowledging the unseen, our exploration of the natural world also begins with accepting a simple truth. What is invisible is not necessarily absent. Sometimes, the things we cannot see are quietly supporting the entire living world. Part 14. Pheromones in the underwater world. When we stand beside the ocean on a quiet night, the first things that usually reach our senses are the gentle rhythm of the waves and the vast surface reflecting the moonlight. It appears so peaceful that it is difficult to imagine the immense world hidden beneath a world where millions of living creatures are constantly exchanging information. There are no voices echoing through the water as there are sounds upon land. Light itself is quickly swallowed by the darkness of the deep sea. Yet life has never become isolated because of this. On the contrary, the oceans have given rise to one of the oldest and most elegant communication systems on Earth: chemical communication. If, on land, the wind carries pheromone molecules through forests and across fields, then beneath the water, it is the ocean currents that become the silent messengers. Every gentle movement of the sea carries countless invisible messages. These molecules may drift a few meters, several kilometers, or even farther before another creature detects them. To us, water seems to be simply water. But to those who inhabit the sea, every current resembles a page from a book filled with information about life itself. Perhaps this reminds us that the world is always richer than our human senses can perceive. We see only the blue of the ocean. Fish, however, can read the chemical messages dissolved within every drop of water. Two species share the same planet, yet each experiences an entirely different reality. For many species of fish, pheromones serve as an invisible compass during extraordinary journeys. Some migrate hundreds, even thousands, of kilometers before returning to the very places where they were born. Along these remarkable migrations, they rely not only on Earth's magnetic field and other environmental cues, but also on chemical signals dissolved in the water that help them recognize familiar rivers or spawning grounds. Water is more than a habitat. It is also a vast reservoir of the chemical memory of an entire ecosystem. For many fish, pheromones also carry messages announcing the arrival of the breeding season. When the time is right, individuals release specialized chemical compounds that inform others that environmental conditions have become favorable for reproduction. There are no calls across the water, no need to see one another from a distance. As long as the current carries the proper signal, another cycle of life quietly begins. One of the best-known examples is the sea lamprey. This ancient group of vertebrates existed long before the age of the dinosaurs. During the breeding season, male sea lampreys release pheromones capable of attracting females from considerable distances. Scientific research has shown that these chemical signals play an important role in guiding mate-searching behavior. Interestingly, this knowledge has also been applied in efforts to manage invasive sea lamprey populations in certain regions, demonstrating that understanding pheromones not only deepens our appreciation of nature, but also supports conservation and ecosystem management. Leaving the world of fish behind, we encounter lobsters and crayfish creatures that might appear to communicate only through powerful claws or movements along the ocean floor. In reality, their lives are also woven together by chemical signals. Many species release pheromones to communicate reproductive status, recognize members of their own species, and, at times, warn others of nearby danger. In aquatic environments, where vision is often limited by depth or murky water, chemical communication becomes a far more dependable solution than sight. There is something quietly beautiful about this. Nature never insists that every environment use the same method of communication. Instead, it adapts gracefully to changing circumstances. In the darkness of the ocean, where light no longer offers an advantage, chemistry becomes the primary language. Even marine worms, soft-bodied creatures that may appear remarkably simple, participate in this invisible conversation. In many species, chemical signals synchronize reproduction. Thousands of individuals may release their gametes almost simultaneously after detecting the appropriate environmental and chemical cues from one another. This remarkable coordination dramatically increases the likelihood of successful fertilization, offering yet another example of how invisible molecules quietly orchestrate some of life's most important events. Then we arrive at the magnificent coral reefs, among the richest ecosystems on Earth. At first glance, coral appears to be little more than colorful stone. In reality, every reef is a living community composed of countless tiny organisms. Within this environment, chemical signals help drifting larvae locate suitable places to settle and begin their lives. Not every surface upon the sea floor offers a safe home. Dissolved chemical compounds act like invisible guideposts, helping the next generation choose locations where their chances of survival are greatest. Perhaps this is one of nature's most touching lessons. From the very beginning of life, many organisms must learn to listen to the invisible signals of their environment in order to find a place where they truly belong. When we step back and observe the underwater world as a whole, we begin to see that pheromones and other chemical signals serve countless purposes. They guide animals toward breeding grounds, allowing future generations to begin life under favorable conditions. They help individuals locate suitable mates, ensuring that they can find one another across the immense expanse of the sea. They warn of danger, allowing groups to respond more quickly to predators. They even help organisms choose habitats, a decision capable of shaping the course of an entire lifetime. What is perhaps most remarkable is that all of this unfolds in complete silence. Carl Gustav Jung devoted many years to exploring the deeper layers of the human mind that conscious awareness rarely reaches. Although he never studied marine biology or pheromones, his perspective suggests a beautiful parallel. Not everything that truly matters exists upon the surface. Just as the ocean contains hidden currents flowing beneath calm waters, the human mind possesses quiet streams of memory, motivation, and unconscious tendencies that continually shape the way we live and experience the world. When we gaze upon the peaceful surface of the sea, we often notice only the moonlight dancing upon gentle waves. Beneath that surface, however, countless powerful currents move silently through the depths. Perhaps the human mind is much the same. Beneath the calm appearance of consciousness lie profound depths that reveal themselves only to those who observe with patience. Perhaps this is the gift the ocean offers us tonight. It gently reminds us that life is connected by far more than what we can see or hear. Sometimes the strongest bonds are formed by tiny molecules drifting quietly through the currents, carrying ancient whispers that nature has patiently sent for hundreds of millions of years. And perhaps, like the ocean itself, every human being carries within a vast inner world, whose invisible currents quietly guide the lifelong journey of growth, discovery, and becoming. Part 15. Pheromones in single-celled organisms. When we think about communication, our minds naturally picture creatures with highly developed brains, sophisticated senses, and many ways of perceiving the world around them. Together, we have wandered through forests where ants lay invisible chemical highways, explored beehives that function like a single living organism, watched snakes rend the air with their forked tongues, and followed the silent conversations of creatures beneath the ocean's surface. All of these examples might lead us to believe that communication belongs only to organisms complex enough to possess advanced nervous systems. Yet as we journey further back into the history of life, nature once again invites us to be humble, for even organisms without brains, without nervous systems, and consisting of only a single cell, have found ways to communicate. At first, this seems almost impossible to imagine. How can a creature with no consciousness and no memory as we ordinarily understand those concepts possibly communicate? Perhaps it is here that we begin to realize something profound. Communication has never been limited to language. At its deepest level, communication is simply the ability to send a signal and for another living organism to respond to it. Seen in this way, chemistry becomes the first, the oldest, and perhaps the most enduring language life has ever created. Imagine the Earth more than 3 billion years ago. There were no forests, no birds, no flowering plants, no oceans filled with fish as we know them today. Life existed only in its simplest forms. There were no eyes with which to see, no ears with which to hear, no brains capable of thought. Yet even within that seemingly silent world, the first conversations had already begun, not through words, but through tiny molecules dissolved in the waters of the ancient Earth. Perhaps this is one of the most moving realizations offered by the study of single-celled organisms. They remind us that connection came before thought. Long before life learned to think, it had already learned to listen. One of the most beautiful examples can be found in yeast. For most of us, yeast is simply the microorganism used to bake bread or brew beer. From the perspective of biology, however, yeast carries within it an evolutionary history stretching back hundreds of millions of years. When conditions become favorable, many species of yeast release chemical molecules that signal to other cells that the time has come to prepare for mating. These signals allow cells of compatible mating types to recognize one another, move closer together, and eventually fuse, beginning an entirely new stage in the life cycle. What is remarkable is that no cell commands another. There is no central controller overseeing the process. Each cell simply responds to the chemical messages carried through its surroundings. Yet from millions of these tiny responses, a larger order gradually emerges. It is a principle that nature seems to repeat again and again across every level of life. If we travel even deeper into the microscopic world, we encounter bacteria, tiny organisms that may well be the most successful forms of life in Earth's entire evolutionary history. They have survived for billions of years, adapting to almost every environment imaginable, from boiling hot springs and the deepest ocean trenches to the human body itself. For many years, scientists believed bacteria existed merely as isolated individuals. Then, an important discovery transformed that understanding completely. Researchers found that bacteria constantly release signaling molecules into their environment. When only a few bacteria are present, the concentration of these molecules remains extremely low and produces little noticeable effect. As the population grows, however, the signaling molecules gradually accumulate. Once they reach a certain threshold, nearly every bacterium changes its behavior at almost exactly the same moment. This remarkable phenomenon is known as quorum sensing. Perhaps one of the most beautiful ways to understand this term is simply the ability to sense the presence of the community. No bacterium actually counts the number of its neighbors. Instead, each one detects only the concentration of chemical molecules surrounding it. Yet from this remarkably simple information, an entire population can suddenly begin glowing with bioluminescence, construct biofilms, release enzymes, or alter its survival strategy together. This astonishes us for one very important reason. Bacteria have no brains, no nervous systems, no conscious awareness, and yet they somehow wait until the community is large enough before acting. Perhaps this is one of nature's clearest demonstrations that intelligence does not always reside within a brain. Sometimes, intelligence emerges from connection itself. Then we encounter an organism even more extraordinary, the slime mold. At first glance, a slime mold appears to be nothing more than a yellow or white layer of soft material spread across a decaying log. Yet when food becomes scarce, tens of thousands of individual cells begin releasing chemical signaling molecules, particularly cyclic AMP, in certain species of slime molds. Other cells detect these signals and gradually begin moving toward the same location. Out of countless independent individuals, an entirely new organism is formed. This larger organism can crawl, search for food, and eventually produce reproductive structures before its cells separate once again and continue their independent lives. Watching this process beneath a microscope, it is difficult not to feel a sense of wonder. Nature seems to be telling us a story about unity. Each individual cell is incredibly small, yet by listening to the same signal, they become something entirely new together. This quietly brings to mind one of Carl Gustav Jung's enduring ideas in depth psychology. Jung often emphasized that human beings are not merely collections of disconnected parts. Rather, the journey towards psychological maturity involves gradually bringing the different aspects of the psyche into harmony within a greater whole that he called the self. Although this is a psychological concept rather than a biological one, the image of the slime mold offers a beautiful metaphor. Small and seemingly separate parts, once they learn to connect, can create something far greater than themselves. Perhaps, after everything we have explored, the greatest lesson of this chapter does not lie in yeast, bacteria, or slime molds themselves. Instead, it lies in how they invite us to reconsider our understanding of intelligence. We often assume that intelligence exists only where there is a large and complex brain. Nature seems to suggest otherwise. Sometimes, what matters most is not the number of neurons an organism possesses, but its ability to listen, to respond, and to connect with the world around it. And perhaps this is exactly what life has been quietly practicing since its earliest beginnings on Earth. Long before language, long before thought, long before any living creature ever lifted its gaze toward a sky filled with stars, there were already tiny chemical molecules drifting silently through the ancient oceans, carrying the very first whispers of life. Perhaps it was from those whispers that the extraordinary story of our planet first began. Part 16. Plants also communicate through chemistry. When we think about communication in nature, we usually imagine creatures that move. We picture flocks of birds calling across the sky, wolves howling beneath the stars, schools of fish turning in perfect unison, or columns of ants laying invisible chemical trails across the forest floor. But what about plants? They remain rooted in one place throughout their entire lives. They have no eyes with which to see, no ears with which to listen, no brains to process information in the way we ordinarily understand. For a very long time, people believed that plants were simply passive organisms, quietly growing, flowering, and eventually fading away with the changing seasons. But nature, as it so often does, gently corrected our assumptions. Over the past few decades, discoveries in plant biology have revealed a very different picture. A forest is not nearly as silent as it appears. Rice fields, grasslands, shrubs, and ancient woodlands are all alive with countless invisible chemical conversations. Their rhythm is simply slower, subtler, and infinitely more patient than the communication we observe among animals. Perhaps, if we learn to listen with patience instead of ears, we may begin to realize that plants also know how to speak. Imagine a young leaf quietly absorbing the warmth of the morning sun. Suddenly, a caterpillar begins feeding along its edge. To us, it seems like nothing more than a tiny bite. To the plant, however, it is the first signal of an attack. Almost immediately, something remarkable begins to happen. The damaged cells trigger a cascade of biochemical reactions. The plant starts producing airborne chemicals, known collectively as volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. These molecules escape into the air and drift toward neighboring plants. To human eyes, nothing appears to happen. There is no light, no sound, no movement. And yet, the forest has just begun a conversation. Nearby plants detect these airborne chemicals and begin changing their own physiology. They increase the production of defensive compounds, making their leaves tougher, more bitter, or less appealing to hungry insects. Some species go even further, releasing chemicals that attract the natural enemies of the attacking insects, such as parasitic wasps or predatory insects. It is difficult not to feel a sense of wonder. A wounded plant does not merely protect itself, it also, quite unintentionally, sends a warning that allows its neighbors to prepare. Perhaps this is one of the most beautiful examples of connection in nature. Not every message is sent for personal benefit. Sometimes, a signal spreads simply to give the community a better chance of survival. This gently recalls the way Carl Gustav Jung viewed the invisible bonds between human beings. Jung believed that beneath our individual personalities lies a deeper shared layer of the psyche, which he called the collective unconscious. Although this idea belongs to psychology rather than biology, it evokes a beautiful parallel. Like trees growing together within the same forest, human beings are sometimes connected through things that are difficult to name: a shared atmosphere, emotions that quietly spread from person to person, or an intuitive sense of connection that exists without explanation. At the same time, when discussing chemical communication in plants, it is important to distinguish between several scientific concepts so that we do not confuse them. First, there are pheromones. In biology, A pheromone is a chemical signal released by one individual that produces a response in another member of the same species. An ant leaves a pheromone trail for other ants to follow. A female moth releases pheromones that attract males of her own species. In plants, however, most airborne chemical signals are not classified as pheromones under this strict biological definition. Another important concept is the pheromone. A pheromone is a chemical signal that unintentionally benefits the receiving species rather than the organism that releases it. Imagine a plant being attacked by caterpillars and releasing volatile compounds into the air. A parasitic wasp detects those chemicals and flies toward the plant, using the caterpillars as hosts for its own offspring. In this situation, the plant's chemical signal has unintentionally helped the wasp locate an opportunity for reproduction. This is a classic example of a pheromone. The opposite concept is the allomone. An allomone is a chemical signal that primarily benefits the organism producing it. Some plants manufacture bitter-tasting or unpleasant-smelling compounds that discourage animals from feeding on their leaves. These chemicals are not intended to communicate with neighboring plants. Instead, they directly improve the plant's own chances of survival. At first glance, these three scientific terms may seem like little more than specialized vocabulary. Yet together they reveal a deeper principle within nature. Not every message serves the same purpose. Some messages encourage cooperation. Some are unintentionally exploited by other species. Others exist primarily for self-defense. Nature does not divide the world into right and wrong. Instead, it creates an endlessly changing web of relationships among living organisms. This is what transforms every forest into an extraordinarily complex network of conversations. When one plant is attacked by insects, another begins preparing its defenses. When a plant releases chemical signals, predators of those insects may be drawn toward it. When those predators arrive, insect populations decline. As the insects become fewer, the forest gradually returns to balance. No one stands behind the scenes directing the entire process. There is no conductor leading this great symphony. Each organism simply responds to the signals it has evolved to perceive, and from countless tiny responses, an entire ecosystem maintains a delicate state of dynamic balance. Perhaps this is what fills us with humility when we observe nature. For so long, we imagined plants as passive beings. Yet in truth, they inhabit a world far richer in information than we ever imagined. They do not flee when danger approaches. They do not cry out when they are wounded. Instead, they choose a quieter language. They release tiny molecules into the air, allowing the wind to become their messenger and the entire forest to listen. And perhaps this is the gentle lesson plants offer us before tonight's chapter comes to a close. Strength does not always lie in speaking the loudest. Sometimes true strength lies in quietly creating connections, in allowing a small signal to travel far enough to reach other forms of life and help preserve the balance of an entire living world. Perhaps, like those forests, each of us also lives within an invisible network of influences, memories, and emotions. And perhaps the quietest things are often the ones that endure the longest. Gently nourishing life, day after day. Part 17. Key concepts in chemical communication. As our journey into the chemical language of life carries us into ever deeper layers of understanding, we begin to discover something quietly fascinating. What first appeared simple gradually reveals itself to be part of an extraordinarily refined system of ideas. Earlier in our exploration, we often referred to nearly every chemical signal in nature by the familiar word pheromone. Yet the more closely biologists have studied these invisible messages, the more they have realized that nature is far more intricate than that. Not every chemical molecule carries the same meaning. Some signals are intended for members of the same species. Others are unintentionally intercepted by entirely different organisms. Some exist primarily for defense. Others are never meant as messages at all. Yet they still influence the behavior of another living creature. Just as human language contains poetry, ordinary conversation, whispered confidences, and cries for help. Nature's chemical language possesses a rich vocabulary of its own. Understanding these concepts not only deepens our appreciation of biology, but also allows us to glimpse the remarkable web of relationships that sustains every ecosystem. Perhaps the most familiar concept is the pheromone. Throughout our journey, we have encountered pheromones in moths, ants, honeybees, snakes, and many other organisms. According to the strict biological definition, a pheromone is a chemical signal released by one individual that produces a specific behavioral or physiological response in another member of the same species. Those final words, the same species, are essential. An ant lays a trail for other ants to follow. A female silkworm moth releases bombicol to attract males of her own species. A queen bee produces queen pheromone to regulate the activities of the colony she inhabits. Each of these represents a classic example of a pheromone. If we imagine nature as a world containing millions of different languages, pheromones resemble conversations taking place among speakers of the same native tongue. The message exists for one clear purpose: to be understood and answered by members of the same species. Yet nature quietly poses another intriguing question. What happens when another organism accidentally overhears that conversation? This brings us to the second concept, the chemical cue. A chemical cue is a much broader idea than a pheromone. It refers to any chemical substance capable of influencing the behavior or physiology of another organism, regardless of whether it evolved specifically for communication. The crucial distinction lies in one simple idea: intent. A pheromone evolved specifically to transmit information. A chemical cue may simply be a byproduct of ordinary biological activity. Imagine a fish that has been injured. Damaged skin cells release chemical compounds into the surrounding water. Nearby fish detect those molecules and immediately swim away from the dangerous area. In many contexts, these substances are considered chemical cues because their effects depend upon the species involved, the biological mechanisms at work, and the ecological context in which they occur. Nature does not always need to speak. Sometimes, simply existing leaves behind traces that other organisms have learned to interpret. Perhaps this resembles something in our own lives. Not everything we communicate is expressed through words. A tired glance, a prolonged silence, a quiet smile. None of these may be intended as messages, yet someone attentive may still understand them. Nature appears to operate according to much the same principle. Next comes the fascinating concept of the pheromone. This may be one of the most remarkable ideas in ecology. A pheromone is a chemical signal that benefits the receiving organism while providing little benefit or even causing harm to the organism that released it. Imagine a caterpillar feeding upon the leaves of a plant. In response to the damage, the plant releases volatile chemicals into the air. A parasitic wasp detects these compounds and flies toward the plant. Rather than helping the plant directly, however, the wasp searches for the caterpillar and lays its eggs within it. Eventually, the caterpillar dies, and the plant benefits only indirectly. From the wasp's perspective, the plant's chemical signal functions like a map leading toward valuable resources. From the caterpillar's perspective, that same signal has made it easier for a predator to locate it. Similarly, certain predatory insects are capable of following the mating pheromones released by other insects in order to locate prey. A signal originally intended to attract a mate unexpectedly becomes a beacon for a hunter. Nature has never promised that every conversation will remain private. Perhaps this invites us to reflect upon a deeper truth. Every message we send carries the possibility that someone else may interpret it in ways we never intended. This is not only a principle of biology, it is also a principle of life itself. The opposite of a pheromone is the allomone. An allomone is a chemical signal that primarily benefits the organism releasing it, while the receiving organism generally gains no advantage and may even be harmed. A familiar example can be found among plants that produce bitter or mildly toxic chemicals to discourage herbivores from eating their leaves. Likewise, certain beetles release foul-smelling defensive compounds that persuade predators to retreat. These messages are not invitations to cooperate. Instead, they resemble a quiet warning: do not come any closer. What is remarkable is that nature never judges these strategies as morally right or wrong. Each is simply another way of improving the chances of survival. When we place these concepts side by side, a remarkably clear picture begins to emerge. A pheromone is a conversation between members of the same species, specifically evolved so that others of that species will understand it. A chemical cue is a broader category that includes any chemical signal another organism can detect, whether intentionally produced for communication or not. A pheromone benefits the receiver more than the sender and may even disadvantage the organism that released it. An allomone benefits the sender, often by discouraging predators or altering the behavior of another species. Only 4 scientific concepts, yet together they reveal an entire philosophy of connection within the natural world. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." This reflection appears in memories, dreams, reflections. Although Jung was not discussing biochemistry or pheromones, his thought evokes a beautiful parallel. What we receive from the world depends not only upon what the world sends, but also upon the way we perceive and interpret it. Nature works in much the same way. The very same chemical signal may become an invitation to one species, a warning to another, and an opportunity for hunting to a third. Perhaps this is the deepest lesson that the chemistry of communication offers us tonight. The world is not woven from simple messages, but from countless relationships among the sender, the receiver, and the circumstances in which they meet. Every chemical molecule is only a tiny signal. Yet, when placed within the right context, it may alter the fate of an individual, an entire population, or even a whole ecosystem. And perhaps, much like our own lives, what truly matters is not only the message we send, but also who is listening and how they choose to understand it. Part 18. The science behind pheromones. As we have wandered together through forests where ants leave invisible highways, beehives humming with the quiet symphony of chemistry, snakes reading the world with their forked tongues, and oceans whose currents carry silent messages across immense distances, perhaps a gentle question has naturally arisen within each of us. What truly gives pheromones their extraordinary power? How can a quantity of molecules so unimaginably small, far beyond the reach of the human eye, change the behavior of an entire organism, or even coordinate the activities of millions of individuals? The answer lies within one of biology's most remarkable wonders. Behind the poetic beauty of nature stands a scientific precision that is nothing short of astonishing. And the more deeply we understand its mechanisms, the more clearly we realize that wonder and science are not opposites. Science simply allows us to recognize the wonder already present within every tiny molecule. At first glance, pheromones are nothing more than chemical compounds. Just as water consists of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom, every pheromone possesses its own specific chemical structure. Yet what gives these molecules their remarkable biological significance is not merely the atoms from which they are built. Far more important is the way those atoms are arranged in 3-dimensional space. In chemistry, 2 molecules may contain exactly the same numbers of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms. Yet if their 3-dimensional structures differ even slightly, their biological functions may become completely different. To a living organism, this difference resembles the difference between 2 keys. At first glance they appear nearly identical, but only one fits the correct lock. Perhaps here we discover another quiet beauty of nature. Life does not respond only to matter itself. It also responds to shape. A pheromone carries information not only through its chemical composition, but through the precise three-dimensional form that evolution has patiently refined over millions of years. In fact, many pheromones are not composed of a single molecule at all. Instead, they consist of carefully balanced mixtures of several different compounds. Imagine listening to a beautiful piece of music. If even one note is slightly out of tune, or one instrument falls out of rhythm, the entire melody changes. Pheromones work in much the same way. Some moth species respond only when the proportions among multiple chemical components are almost perfectly balanced. Alter those proportions even slightly, and the signal may lose its effectiveness entirely. Nature resembles an extraordinarily patient composer. Every individual note matters, but so does the harmony created between them. Yet no message has meaning unless someone is able to receive it. This brings us to one of biology's most remarkable inventions: specialized receptors. Imagine once again that every pheromone molecule is a tiny key. Within the receiving organism exist thousands or sometimes millions of microscopic locks formed by specialized receptor proteins. When a pheromone possessing the correct shape encounters its matching receptor, the two fit together with extraordinary precision. It is as though a door has quietly opened. Almost instantly, the chemical signal is transformed into an electrical one. Nerve impulses begin traveling through the nervous system. A new behavior emerges. What is truly astonishing is how quickly this entire sequence unfolds. A tiny molecule floating through the air becomes an electrical signal within the nervous system, which then becomes a complete behavioral response. Without the discoveries of modern biology, such a transformation might once have seemed impossible to believe. Among insects, many of these receptor proteins are concentrated within their antennae. Viewed under an electron microscope, the antenna of a moth or beetle is far from smooth. Its surface is covered with countless microscopic sensory structures. Inside each are receptors exquisitely specialized to recognize exactly the molecules that particular species needs to detect. In this sense, an insect's antenna is far more than a sensory organ. It is something like a miniature chemical laboratory. Yet, nature's elegance extends even further. Pheromones do not spread through the air as an even cloud. Instead, the wind continuously breaks them into irregular streams, known as odor plumes. These plumes become stronger and weaker, thicker and thinner, sometimes disappearing altogether before reappearing moments later. This explains why a male moth, searching for a mate, does not simply fly in a straight line. Instead, it moves in a characteristic zigzag pattern. Whenever it encounters a strong signal, it flies upwind. When the signal disappears, it sweeps sideways until it locates the scent again. Then it turns back toward the center of the plume. Again and again, this process repeats, gradually guiding the moth toward its destination. What the moth is truly following is something scientists call an odor gradient, the gradual change in pheromone concentration through space. The stronger the concentration becomes, the closer the source is likely to be. Perhaps this, too, gently reminds us of something about our own lives. Human beings rarely discover answers in a single straight line. We move forward, then sideways. Sometimes we retrace our steps before continuing once again. From the outside, our journeys may appear uncertain, yet perhaps, like the moth, we are quietly following subtle gradients, formed by intuition, experience, and understanding. Biologists also classify pheromones into two major functional categories. The first is known as releaser pheromones. These produce behavioral responses that occur almost immediately. An alarm pheromone causes ants to enter a defensive state within moments. A mating pheromone prompts a male moth to begin searching for a female almost instantly. They resemble the sudden ringing of a bell in the stillness of the night. The signal is heard, and the response follows immediately. The second category consists of primer pheromones. Unlike releaser pheromones, primer pheromones do not produce immediate behavioral changes. Instead, they quietly influence physiology over much longer periods. The queen pheromone of honeybees provides a beautiful example. It does not instantly alter the actions of worker bees. Rather, it gradually suppresses ovarian development and helps maintain the stable social organization of the colony. If a releaser pheromone resembles a flash of lightning, then a primer pheromone resembles the arrival of spring. It is not dramatic. It is not sudden, yet day by day, it quietly transforms an entire living system. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it." This reflection appears in Modern Man in Search of a Soul. Although Jung was speaking about meaning in human life rather than biology, his words evoke a beautiful parallel. A single pheromone molecule may be unimaginably small, yet if it carries the correct biological meaning, it can produce consequences far greater than countless other molecules that carry no information at all. Perhaps this is the deepest lesson that the science behind pheromones offers us tonight. Nature does not construct life through grand gestures. It builds everything from countless tiny details arranged with astonishing precision. The shape of a molecule, the structure of a receptor protein, an electrical impulse traveling through a nervous system, a gentle breeze carrying only a handful of invisible molecules. Any one of these may become the beginning of an entirely new journey. And perhaps this quietly reminds us of our own lives as well. Sometimes it is the smallest moments, the subtlest signals, and the changes almost too delicate to notice that become the unseen seeds from which the deepest transformations of the human spirit quietly grow. Part 19. The limitations of pheromones. After exploring the extraordinary world of pheromones, from ants building invisible highways and honeybee colonies functioning like living organisms, to moths finding one another in complete darkness through only a handful of chemical molecules, it would be easy to conclude that pheromones represent an almost perfect communication system. Yet nature has never created anything that is perfect in the absolute sense. Every gift bestowed by evolution carries its own limitations. Just as every light casts a shadow, every message that is sent also carries the possibility of being misunderstood, exploited, or altered by the environment itself. Perhaps these limitations make the story of pheromones even more meaningful. They remind us that in nature, no advantage exists without a cost. Imagine a female moth gently releasing pheromones into the night to attract a mate. For her, this signal is an invitation to life itself, the beginning of another generation. But somewhere within the forest, unseen predators have also learned to read the very same language. Certain spiders, predatory insects, and parasitic species are capable of following the pheromone trails of their prey. A signal intended to unite members of the same species suddenly becomes a map leading danger directly to them. There is something quietly profound about this reality. Every signal in nature has two sides. The moment you become easier for those you seek to find, you also become easier for those who seek to hunt you. Perhaps this has always been one of life's oldest compromises. No communication system is completely secure. Every message must balance the benefits of connection against the risks of exposure. It is difficult not to recognize a similar truth within human life. Whenever we open our hearts, reveal our genuine emotions, or allow others to see who we truly are, we create the same dual possibility. Our honesty may lead us toward those who genuinely understand us, yet that same openness may also leave us more vulnerable. Nature does not consider this a mistake. It simply considers it the price of connection. Predators are not the only challenge. The environment itself can reshape chemical messages. Pheromones never exist in empty space. They must travel through air or water. And throughout that journey, countless environmental factors continuously influence them. Among the most important of these is the wind. If the wind is too gentle, pheromone molecules spread only slowly, limiting the distance over which they can communicate. But if the wind becomes too strong, odor plumes fragment into irregular streams flowing in many different directions. A male moth following a pheromone trail may suddenly lose the signal not because it has disappeared, but because the wind has rearranged its invisible path. This is precisely why many insects fly in zigzag patterns rather than straight lines. They constantly adjust their movements to accommodate subtle shifts in the invisible landscape surrounding them. Humidity presents another challenge. Moist air can alter both the diffusion rate and the persistence of many chemical compounds. Some pheromones remain stable longer under humid conditions. Others degrade more quickly. To us, a humid day may simply feel warm or uncomfortable. To an insect, it may determine whether an important message is successfully received or missed entirely. Temperature also plays a critical role. Higher temperatures often increase evaporation, changing the concentration of pheromone molecules within the environment. Lower temperatures may reduce diffusion rates or even influence how effectively receptors detect chemical signals. As a result, exactly the same quantity of pheromone may produce very different outcomes depending on the time of day or the season of the year. Perhaps nature quietly reminds us here that even a perfect message always depends upon its context. Yet the modern world has introduced another challenge, one for which evolution has had little time to prepare many species: environmental pollution. Today's atmosphere contains an increasing number of industrial pollutants and synthetic chemicals. Research suggests that some air pollutants can react with volatile organic compounds, altering their chemical structures or shortening the time they remain stable in the atmosphere. A signal that once could travel hundreds of meters through natural air may now weaken far more quickly or even become chemically modified before reaching its intended receiver. For many insects that depend almost entirely upon pheromones to locate mates, such changes may influence reproductive success and, ultimately, the survival of entire populations. It is remarkable to consider that a subtle alteration in atmospheric chemistry may interrupt conversations that nature has maintained for hundreds of millions of years. This realization gently reminds us that ecosystems are often more fragile than they appear. When human activity changes the air, water, or soil, it does not merely alter the physical environment. It may also disrupt the invisible languages upon which countless species depend for survival. Stepping back to view the larger picture reveals a beautiful pattern. Pheromones offer extraordinary advantages. They help organisms locate mates, warn of danger, organize societies, recognize members of the same species, choose suitable habitats. Yet those same signals can also be exploited. They may be distorted by changing environments, interrupted by weather, degraded by pollution, or rendered ineffective as conditions shift. Nature has never produced a solution possessing only strengths. Every adaptation carries its own limitations. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." This reflection appears in psychological aspects of the mother archetype, and has since been widely quoted throughout his collected works. Although Jung was describing psychological development rather than evolutionary biology, his words evoke a striking parallel. Every evolutionary advance comes with its own trade-offs. Every new ability creates new vulnerabilities. Yet it is precisely through those challenges that life continues adapting, diversifying, and evolving. Perhaps this is the gentle lesson nature offers us before this chapter comes to a close. Nothing in life provides benefits without responsibility. Every connection carries a measure of vulnerability. Every message may be interpreted in unexpected ways. And yet it is precisely these imperfections that make life so rich and so precious. Just as a forest continues whispering through changing winds, through sunshine and rain alike, our own lives need not strive for flawless certainty. Instead, perhaps our task is simply to adapt, to listen carefully, and to continue reaching toward one another with the same quiet patience that nature has preserved through billions of years of evolution. Part 20. Technological applications. As we look back on the journey we have taken together from moths following invisible pheromone trails through the darkness, to ants quietly building unseen highways, to honeybee colonies functioning like a single living organism, and even bacteria that can seemingly count their neighbors through chemical signals, we may naturally begin to wonder, are these wonders simply fascinating stories from nature, or do they hold lessons for humanity itself? The answer is a remarkable one. Over the past several decades, scientists and engineers have done far more than simply observe nature out of curiosity. They have begun learning from it. And perhaps most astonishing of all, many modern technologies, from artificial intelligence to autonomous robotics, now carry within them ideas first written by tiny creatures that evolved millions of years before humans ever appeared. Perhaps this is one of science's most beautiful moments. After billions of years of evolution, nature has already solved countless problems that humanity has only recently begun to face. Rather than attempting to invent every solution from scratch, we have slowly learned to become humble students of the natural world. If you watch a colony of ants moving across the forest floor, their paths may initially appear random. No individual ant possesses a complete map of the forest. No single ant stands above the others, directing traffic. Yet somehow, thousands of individuals collectively discover the shortest routes to food, adapt when obstacles appear, and quickly reorganize whenever the environment changes. For many scientists, this once posed a fascinating question. How can a system without a central brain perform so efficiently? That question eventually gave rise to an entire field of research known as swarm intelligence. Swarm intelligence does not describe the brilliance of any one individual. Instead, it describes intelligence that emerges from the cooperation of many simple individuals. Each ant understands only a tiny fraction of its world. Yet when every ant responds appropriately to pheromone signals and local environmental cues, the colony displays an extraordinary capacity for solving complex problems. Perhaps this offers one of nature's gentlest lessons. Intelligence does not always reside within a single extraordinary individual. Sometimes, intelligence emerges from connection itself. This idea inspired computer scientists during the early 1990s. Among the pioneers was Marco Dorigo, who developed what became one of the most influential optimization techniques in computer science: ant colony optimization, commonly known as ACO. Although the name may sound highly technical, the underlying principle is surprisingly simple. Imagine a colony of ants searching for food. At first, different ants explore different directions. Those that accidentally discover shorter routes return more quickly, depositing pheromone more frequently along their paths. Other ants are increasingly likely to follow trails containing stronger pheromone concentrations. As more ants reinforce the shortest path, that route gradually becomes the preferred choice of the entire colony. Marco Dorigo realized that exactly the same principle could help computers solve many difficult optimization problems, finding the most efficient delivery routes, optimizing transportation networks, designing communication systems, scheduling industrial manufacturing, even solving highly complex mathematical problems where testing every possible solution individually would require centuries of computation. Inside an ACO algorithm, the ants are not insects at all. They are virtual agents. The pheromones are simply numerical values stored inside computer memory. Yet something remarkable happens. When these agents repeatedly follow a few simple rules, sophisticated problem-solving behavior begins to emerge, closely resembling the behavior of real ant colonies. It quietly reminds us that some of the most elegant solutions arise not from increasing complexity, but from allowing simple principles to interact harmoniously. Nature's influence extends well beyond computer algorithms. It has also inspired one of today's fastest-growing fields of engineering: swarm robotics. Instead of building a single enormous robot capable of performing every task, engineers began asking a different question. What if we created hundreds of very small robots, each capable of performing only a few simple functions, but able to cooperate the way ants do? Today, research laboratories around the world are actively exploring exactly this approach. Groups of miniature robots may someday search collapsed buildings after earthquakes, explore environments too dangerous for human rescuers, survey the surfaces of distant planets, or collectively transport objects that no individual robot could move alone. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of these systems is that most require no central commander. Each robot simply responds to local information and to nearby neighbors. Yet from countless small interactions emerges organized, adaptive behavior. If this sounds familiar, it is because nature mastered this strategy hundreds of millions of years before humans invented electricity or computers. Even the field of artificial intelligence has increasingly drawn inspiration from nature's distributed systems. Not because AI seeks to imitate ants themselves, but because researchers have discovered that decentralized systems often adapt remarkably well to changing environments. Rather than placing every decision under the control of one program, many modern AI approaches allow multiple independent agents to learn, exchange information, and gradually adjust their behavior together. This is the very spirit of swarm intelligence. Each individual remains relatively simple. Together, they become remarkably capable. Here we are reminded of an idea Carl Gustav Jung explored throughout much of his life's work. Jung believed that human beings cannot truly be understood merely by examining isolated parts. Meaning emerges only when those parts become integrated into a larger whole. Although he never wrote about robotics or artificial intelligence, his perspective echoes something deeply familiar within swarm intelligence. Sometimes the greatest power lies not within the individual components, but within the relationships connecting them. Perhaps this is the deepest lesson technology has learned from nature. For centuries, humanity assumed that truly powerful systems required a powerful central authority. Yet ants, bees, and countless tiny organisms have quietly told a different story. A system may become extraordinary when every individual simply responds appropriately to local information while contributing toward a shared purpose. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." This reflection appears in Collected Works of C.G. Jung. Volume 9, Part 1, The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious. Although Jung was describing the human psyche rather than engineering, his words beautifully mirror the essence of swarm intelligence. What appears to us as chaos may simply be an order we have not yet learned to perceive. Perhaps this is the final gift that pheromones and the tiny creatures who rely upon them offer us. The future of technology will not be built solely inside laboratories filled with machines. It will also be shaped by humanity's willingness to remain humble before nature. Every small ant, every invisible droplet of pheromone, every silent chemical conversation taking place beneath the forest canopy, all continue telling stories that modern artificial intelligence is only beginning to understand. And perhaps, the more faithfully we learn from nature, the closer we come to creating technologies that are not only more powerful, but also more adaptive, more resilient, and wiser, reflecting the quiet intelligence that life itself has been patiently refining for billions of years. As we arrive at the final moments of this journey, perhaps what remains with us is not simply the scientific concepts or the names we have encountered: bombicol, queen pheromone, quorum sensing, or ant colony optimization. Perhaps what lingers most deeply is a quiet realization that the world is far larger than anything human eyes are capable of seeing. Across billions of years of evolution, nature has patiently composed a language that requires no sound, no light, and no written words. A language written instead with molecules so incredibly small that we cannot see them with the naked eye, yet powerful enough to guide migrations, begin breeding seasons, organize ant colonies, sustain honeybee societies, and quietly hold entire ecosystems together in astonishing harmony. Perhaps this is why so many biologists describe pheromones as one of life's oldest languages. Long before the first creatures learned to produce sound, long before the first eyes opened to light, long before brains evolved to think, tiny chemical molecules were already carrying messages between cells, between organisms, and among Earth's earliest forms of life. It is remarkable to imagine that the immense history of life may have begun with signals so incredibly small. Throughout this journey, we followed moths, navigating through darkness by scent alone. We entered the world of ants, where no leader exists, yet extraordinary order emerges. We watched honeybee colonies maintained through the quiet influence of queen pheromones. We observed snakes reading the air with forked tongues, the inhabitants of the oceans sending messages through flowing currents, bacteria that somehow count their neighbors, even forests silently warning one another when hungry caterpillars arrive. At first glance, these stories seem entirely unrelated, yet the longer we listen, the more clearly they begin telling exactly the same story. The story of connection. Nature has never built life from completely isolated individuals. Life survives because information can be shared, and chemistry became one of the very first bridges that made such sharing possible. Perhaps the greatest wonder lies in the extraordinary scale of change that a single tiny molecule can create. A few molecules of bomicol are enough to redirect the entire flight of a male moth. A faint pheromone trail upon the ground is enough to guide thousands of ants along the same path. One queen pheromone can help maintain the social structure of an entire colony containing tens of thousands of bees. A dissolved chemical signal can guide migrating fish back to their birthplace after journeys spanning hundreds of kilometers. One tiny molecule, one enormous consequence. Nature quietly teaches us something beautiful. Power is not always proportional to size. Sometimes, the smallest things create the greatest movements. Perhaps this echoes something Carl Gustav Jung often sought to express while exploring the inner life of human beings. He once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." This reflection appears in collected works of C.G. Jung. Volume 10, Civilization in Transition. Although Jung was speaking about the inward journey of human consciousness rather than biology, his words beautifully reflect the journey we have taken together. From the surface, we simply see ants walking, moths flying, or forests standing quietly beneath the sky. But once we begin looking more deeply, we awaken to another world entirely, one in which invisible messages quietly connect every living thing. For decades, scientists have also continued asking one especially intriguing question. Do humans possess pheromones? It is a fascinating question, and one whose answer remains incomplete. As we have discovered together, compounds such as androstadienone and estratrinol have been carefully investigated. The hypothesis of menstrual synchrony generated years of scientific discussion. Yet, at present, the available evidence does not support the conclusion that humans possess pheromones according to the strict biological definition, a naturally released chemical signal that reliably produces a specific, repeatable physiological or behavioral response in members of the same species. But this uncertainty does not make humanity any less remarkable. Quite the opposite. It reminds us that our journey toward understanding ourselves is still unfolding. Perhaps human behavior arises from many layers working together: biology, memory, culture, emotion, learning, and the countless experiences gathered throughout an entire lifetime. It is precisely this complexity that makes the human mind one of nature's most beautiful mysteries. If pheromones offer us one lasting lesson, perhaps it is not merely a lesson in biology, it is a lesson in humility. We often imagine that everything we see constitutes the whole of reality, yet every species experiences only a small portion of the world. Humans perceive colors invisible to many animals. Bees perceive ultraviolet light. Snakes read chemical signals through the Jacobson's organ. Fish interpret flowing currents. Ants navigate invisible chemical highways. Every species lives within the same universe. Yet each reads a different chapter of nature's book. Perhaps this is why nature deserves our deepest respect. Not because it is always powerful, but because it is always greater than our imagination. And now, as night gently settles around us, perhaps we, too, can allow this journey to come peacefully to rest. Somewhere beyond your window, within a quiet garden, across an open meadow, beneath the forest floor, millions of invisible chemical messages continue their silent conversations. Ants are still finding their way home. Moths are still following invisible currents carried by the wind. Forests continue warning one another. The oceans still carry the ancient whispers of life through every moving current. We cannot hear these conversations. We cannot see them, but that does not mean they do not exist. Perhaps, much like the lifelong journey Carl Gustav Jung devoted himself to pursuing, nature gently reminds us that beyond everything visible lies a deeper, subtler, and more wondrous reality. And perhaps, when we learn to slow down, to observe with curiosity, and to meet the natural world with humility, we begin to discover that the greatest beauty of life is rarely found in what is loud. Instead, it lives quietly within the invisible threads that have connected every living creature on Earth for billions of years. And now, as our story finally comes to an end, I hope your thoughts can drift as gently as a single leaf carried upon the evening breeze. May that quiet sense of wonder stay with you as you let go of the day. May your breathing become slower, your mind become lighter, and your heart find the same peaceful rhythm that nature has patiently kept since life first began. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. Sleep peacefully, sleep deeply, and may tomorrow greet you with renewed curiosity, quiet strength, and gentle wonder. Good night.